Can everybody hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Hey, wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Let us begin. First of all, I understand that our sessions are actually from 9:30 until 12. Is that correct?
I think it's 9:30 to 12:30.
12:30. Okay. Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. Usually, I don't give break sessions. I tend to just go straight through the entire time. So from time to time, you'll find that I'll probably dismiss class a little bit earlier before 12:30 to make up for the no break program. That doesn't mean if you need to rush off and have a cup of coffee or something, you can do that and come all the way back and continue with us. Please feel free to do that. First and foremost, let me first of all begin by introducing myself. I'll be a lecturer for the next 4 sessions, the 5th, the 12th, the 19th, and the 26th. So let me just say a little bit about myself so you have an idea who will be shouting at you for the next couple of weeks. My name is Samuel Wilkinson, and I will be a lecturer for the next 4 sessions on governance and leadership in particular. I notice you guys have had quite an interesting year already with all of this AML stuff. And so I'm just here to add to your stress and hopefully your information base at the same time. My contacts, in case somebody needs to send me a text, give me a call, send me an email, please. My phone number is 565-9551. It's 565-9551. And my email address is S as in Samuel, J as in Jack, H as in Henry, Wilkinson, WILKINSON @hotmail.com. Okay. If you have any questions or issues or concerns throughout our sessions, please feel free to send me a text or send me an email. I'll be happy to respond to them. All right. So now it's to my register to see who I'm talking to for the next couple of weeks. So I just kind of pulled your names off. I don't have an official class list yet, but I got your names from my email that came in. So I'm going to give it a shot with my makeshift register. If I call your name incorrectly, please correct me. If I don't call your name at all at the end, please say something like you didn't call my name so that I can get you on my list, please. All right. By the way, my sessions tend to be very interactive sessions as far as I'm concerned. By that, I mean, I'll be yapping, I'll have you yapping, and I'll doing some stuff. And you can interrupt me anytime during my lecture with any questions, concerns, inquiries, stories, case studies, topologies, anything you feel like that you want to share either with myself or with your colleagues or all of us. Okay, so feel free to be as open as you wish, and you don't have to wait until the end of my class to raise questions. You can raise them anytime, interrupt me anytime. Okay, Alma Moultrie. Okay, no Alma yet. Angela Butler.
Here.
Okay, Angela. Okay, fantastic. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Annie Curtis. Annie Curtis. Okay. Dandria Ramsey. No Dandria yet. Dimitri Ferguson.
Good morning.
Morning, Dimitri. Welcome aboard. Delisa McKenzie.
Good morning.
Morning. Is that Day or D?
Delisa.
Yeah. Okay, Delisa. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you. Morning.
Ivania, is it? Ivania Roberts? Okay, no Ivania yet. This looks like Jaffe Simmons.
Good morning, Jaffe.
Jaffe, okay, great. Jaffe Simmons, welcome aboard. Jensen Curry. Okay, no Jensen yet. Now, the next name I'm going to call is what I picked up of the email. If this is not your correct name, please let me know. But what I saw from your email is Lady Hepburn. Is that person in the session this morning? Lady Hepburn?
Annie Hepburn.
Annie Hepburn. Thank you very much, Annie.
You're welcome.
Of course, that doesn't change your lady status.
No, it doesn't. Thank you.
Lady Annie Hepburn, how about that?
Yes, that's good.
Oh, sounds good too. Mariag Wells? Did I say that right? Mariag?
Maria.
Maria, okay.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. So that's Maria G. Wells then.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Maria. Ochi? Did I say that right? Ochi Smith?
O'Shea, good morning.
O'Shea, O-C-H-E-A?
O-C-H-E-E Smith.
Ah, okay. Pronounced O'Shea. All right. Thank you very much, O'Shea. Smith. Omar Neely.
Yes, that's correct. Omar Daily.
Okay, excellent. Welcome aboard. Sharia Quant.
Yes, it's Shari Kwan.
Shari, like in Shari Belafonte.
You can just use that up as a reference.
Yeah. Anybody remembers who Shari Belafonte is?
Yes, the old ones.
Yeah. I'm trying not to give away my age, but anyway, her father was a Belafonte. That's all I'll say about it.
Ari Belafonte.
Yeah, from way back in the day. My. Where did the time go? Shakita,
Hi, good morning.
good morning. Is that Shakita LaDonna, is it?
Yeah, Shakita Lozano.
Okay, excellent. Shakita. Great. Simone.
Hi, good morning. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, welcome aboard, Simone, darling.
Thank you.
Is that Sharon McKenzie? Sharon, okay. And something Hadasha. Okay.
That's probably me. Good morning.
Okay, so what should I write here, Hadasha? Sorry? Sheena Kalma. Okay, fantastic. How do you spell your first name? S-H-E-E-N-A?
Yes.
Okay, Sheena Kalma. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay.
For that. And then the last name that I have from what I gathered is Yolanda Woodside. Okay. Is there anybody's name I didn't call who's with us?
Hi, good morning.
Okay, Ann Curtis, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Let me just add that here, Ann Curtis. Great. Anybody else that I may have missed?
I'm not sure if you call DeAndrea Ramsey.
DeAndrea Ramsey. Okay, there we go. Thank you, DeAndrea, for kicking in.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
Ivania Roberts just joined.
Ivania, that name sounds familiar. I saw that somewhere. Ivania. Yes, okay, thank you, Ivania. Ann Curtis, are you the same as Annie Curtis?
Yes.
Okay, great, great. So I had that earlier, I just need to confirm. Perfect. Annie, get your gun. Okay, another old movie. Okay. So fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. If somebody joins us and I didn't get your name, you can just shout it out at any time. So did everybody get the information that I gave with regards to myself?
Good morning. This is Yolanda. Sorry.
Underwood. Yolanda.
Woodside.
Yes, Yolanda Woodside. Thank you very much for kicking in. That's exactly what I want you to do on any issues for the next 4 weeks. Just kick in, whatever the hell, not hell, heck it is. All right. We're talking about anti-money laundering and terrorist financing and proliferation financing and all that stuff. So we could say anything we want to, so to speak, almost. All right. Feel free. If you have any cases, issues, scenarios that you'd like to share or get feedback on, you don't have to call any names so that nobody bothers you or you're not indicted for anything, but please feel free to share because of course, anything you say could be helpful to someone in your group, okay, for sure. All right, so just in case you missed it the first time, my name is Samuel Wilkinson. I will be your lecturer for the next 4 weeks. My contacts, my cell number is 565-9551. You can call me or send me a text if you have any issues or questions, or send me an email at sjhwilkinson, sjhwilkinson, WILKINSON @hotmail.com. Feel free, that's the motto. All right, so before I get into all the other stuff for today, let me just find out who I'm talking to a little bit, so I can have an idea of, I guess, what I should say and shouldn't say. And not that it matters at this stage. This is AML class. We can say all kinds of stuff because all kinds of stuff are going on in the money laundering world, terrorist world anyway. So we might as well be free to say reasonable stuff and even incredible stuff if necessary. All right, Angela, introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Angela Butler. I work with Credit Suisse Trust Limited, the CFO. I've been there for 15 years. I've been in financial services for about maybe 20 years. And right now I want to get into compliance. I'm doing some compliance work at Credit Suisse Trust, so I just wanted to get more in-depth knowledge.
Sounds good. You are definitely in the right place. That manual that you guys got for this course, I guess you figured out by now that that is the Bible of compliance as far as the ICA is concerned. It's a fairly comprehensive manual, and it certainly is something that you want, if you're in compliance at all or in the environment, you want to keep somewhere as a source of reference. I think,
right.
I don't think I have to say that to you guys at this stage that it's an excellent source of reference long after you've gotten through this program. All right, great stuff, Angela. Well, welcome to compliance. Whenever you get in there, it's a very dynamic area. And it doesn't seem as if it's going to slow down anytime soon. Pandemic or no pandemic.
I can see that.
As you can see, the pandemic didn't slow down bank inspections and regulators regulating and all that stuff, and compliance and MLROs being responsible for their jobs.
Yes.
So yeah, it'll be
a lot on compliance. It's a lot on compliance.
Yeah.
World, yes, a lot.
Absolutely. The interesting thing about compliance for all of you who are doing this program is that compliance is very pervasive. It's not just about financial institutions alone. That's the other thing. A couple of years ago, I mentioned to one of the senior executives at BPL, I said, you guys have a compliance department. They said, well, why do we need one? The fact that they asked that question alone is very interesting because for some reason, people think that when you talk about compliance, you're only talking about a financial institution. Truth of the matter is, compliance is relevant in every aspect of our lives, certainly all entities anywhere in the world. People are always up to no good, sorry. And well, I don't really apologize, they are. And that's one of the reasons why compliance has become so important in the modern world. You'd think with all this compliance going on, people will behave. Board members would behave, senior management would behave, stop being fined, auditors would stop being fined and indicted for not conducting proper audits and all this crazy stuff, but they are not yet. They're still. In fact, what they're doing is trying to discourage compliance people from doing their jobs, which is a whole other discussion. So yeah, thank you, Angela. Good luck. You're headed into a hornet's nest. But hey, what the hell? It'll make your life interesting for sure. All right. Annie Curtis, introduce yourself.
Okay, good morning again.
Morning, Ann.
I work in the financial services sector. I
You know,
started,
you realize, Annie, that financial services is a generic term.
pardon?
You realize that financial services sector is a generic term.
I work in financial services. I did my first course in compliance in 2000 and I think that was 2018. And I found out that it was something I had an interest in. And so I continued on and I'm looking to branch out, and explore this area more.
Sounds good. Okay. Well, if it's a compliance related issue, you're definitely in the right place for sure. All right. Good luck and welcome aboard. D'Andrea. D'Andrea Ramsey. Okay, I guess D'Andrea went off for that coffee a little earlier than expected. Dimitri Ferguson.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Dimitri.
Yeah, good morning. I know. Dimitri Ferguson. I work in administration and operations of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force. It's very vast and vast department.
Yeah.
We do conduct investigations, obviously, on certain matters.
Yes.
Which prompted me to participate in this course. I've been in the defense for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and
amazing.
It's rewarding, and I've already seen the rewards of the initial studies, but that's all I have to say right now.
I quite understand. I do understand completely the implications of it. It's fascinating that we have somebody from the Defense Force who's actually involved in a compliance class. One of these days, maybe you can persuade them, Dimitri, to get more and more of the younger officers in and seasoned officers who've been there a while into the compliance program, because like you said, I'm sure you've seen the benefits of a whole lot of this stuff already in one, especially from an administrative perspective. To make a point, you know, I'm sure that your officers, for example, are required to maintain a certain decorum. They're required to even maintain their weapons a certain way, if I understand it correctly. And
correct.
yeah, making sure that they maintain their weapons alone in a certain way on a consistent basis is a compliance issue. Are they in fact complying? One of the reasons why we have senior officers, as I understand it, come in and do impromptu checks on these young officers and their weapons to make sure that they are compliant, because there could be a tendency for some of them to not follow the rules. So this compliance thing is certainly not restricted to financial institutions, far from it. As you can see now with Dimitri on board, this thing goes deep into any kind of entity, no matter what entity it might be. Okay? And so, well, welcome aboard, Dimitri. You are unique. Most of the persons who do this program are from financial services or head in that direction. So I hope that you'll go back and tell your people that this is a program that Defense Force officers should be looking at least some of them, and so that they can be groomed when you go off to fish, God knows when. All right, good stuff. Welcome aboard. All right. Let's see. Dandri, are you back yet? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Dandri is back. Introduce yourself, Dandri.
I'm DeAndrea Ramsey. I work at Central Bank of the Bahamas in the Bank Supervision Department. So
Okay.
I'm taking this course to enhance my AML and CFT skills.
Indeed.
You know, as you previously said, it's a high, it's a top priority at this time, especially through COVID.
It is, absolutely. And even long after COVID is, God forbid, history, it'll continue to be a priority. The compliance issues are just never going to go away. I don't think anytime soon, if ever anymore. So yeah, welcome aboard. In the old days, we refer to you guys in bank supervision as bloody regulators.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I like you said, thank you very much. I'm a regulator, if you please. I'm a regulator, if
Yeah.
you please. So that's the way to go. That's why we have regulators, to try and keep certain entities compliant. Because even with regulators watching, folks are still, quote unquote, egging, are they not?
Yes, that's true.
Yes.
It never ends.
No, we know the regulators are watching, and we're still trying to take shortcuts, ignore instructions, report late, get around stuff. It is absolutely amazing. Okay?
Yes.
So yeah, you are in the hornet's nest, but that's okay. We need people in the hornet's nest. All right, way to go. Delisa.
Hi, good morning again.
Morning.
Delisa McKenzie. I'm an attorney by profession, and I currently work in the financial services industry with a focus on real estate and property. So I work more in that arena.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to make the shift over to compliance. We know that compliance is everywhere. I find it to be an innovative field, a moving train. And so I just wanted to position myself, I guess, to be more marketable and to expand my knowledge.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. You're definitely on the right track, for sure. At least we have one attorney that's not the other kind of attorneys. You know, the feeling joke about attorneys, like, no, I'm just teasing. But there are all kinds of stories about attorneys, as I'm sure you know. But you're a different kind of attorney. You're going to be a compliance kind of attorney, which is good. Okay. We need some lawyers who are actually seeking to ensure compliance rather than the other stuff. Okay, way to go, Delisa.
Thanks.
Ivania, that sounds like Trump's people. Ivania, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Ivania.
Hi, my name is Ivania Roberts.
Hi, Ivania.
Ivania, yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm currently a teller at Scotiabank, and I wanted, to pursue compliance as a career. So this class is helping me to gain steps towards doing that.
Sounds good. So when you sign that next performance appraisal report and they say, what would you like to do next? You'll be able to say, this is what I'd like to do next.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And here's the paper too. Prove it.
Yes, sir.
You definitely on the right track. Remind me of the good old days when I used to be a teller, just like you, wondering what the hell was going to happen to my life and where was I going to end up. And interestingly enough, it ended up being more interesting than I had planned. All right, so Ivania, don't be discouraged. Keep on trucking. Okay, interesting things will happen as you truck.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll tell you all this story quickly. Yeah, back in the day when I graduated high school, I won't say when, don't want to give away my age anytime soon if I don't have to. Not that it matters anymore. But my first job after I graduated high school was standing up at a computer at a copier, taking copies for current accounts department at Citibank because they said they didn't have any other kind of job available. And since I was interested in any kind of job, that's where I started. And then eventually they sent me down to work as a teller in Citibank back in those days. And then, and I was making a grand old salary of like $65 a week, and I was thrilled about that. Excited, $65 a week. Man, this is better than nothing a week. And then in another year or year and a half, I saw a customs application somewhere to join the customs department. And I'm like, oh, let me just fill it in because I need to make more than $65 a week. And they called me. So I was a civil servant for about 2 years in the customs department where I learned some very interesting things that are beneficial to me even today. And then I saw an application for Scotiabank. They're looking to hire loan management trainees. And let me fill this and see what happens. And they actually called me and all that kind of stuff. And that was just the beginning part of my life. And then after that, I worked for many, many years as a financial controller all over the place in financial services and transportation and hotel industry and all that crap. And then after all of that, I worked for about 20 odd years in private banking in all kinds of places for all kinds of international banks all over the place. Everywhere from compliance, MLRO to senior management, senior one, all that crap. Sorry, not crap. You know what I mean? But I just say that to say to Ivania, and all the rest of you, keep on trucking. I never thought that I would end up doing all the crazy things I did. I thought that I would have done the typical thing, work somewhere for 30 years and retire and go and kick back and have a beer and so on. Didn't work out that way. And I have absolutely no regrets. Okay. So way to go, Ivania. Keep on trucking. Way to go. Okay. Jaffe. Are you there?
Good morning.
Good morning, Jaffe.
Hi, I'm Jaffe Simmons. I have a background in economics. Currently, pursuing my grad studies in economic development, specializing in regulations and regulatory procedures. And I am interested in going into the world of compliance. So I decided that I should just jump in and do it. And so here I am.
Okay, sounds good. You're definitely in the right place. Have you ever thought of working in the economics department at the Central Bank of the Bahamas where the regulators are? Not really.
We may end up there. I'm not sure.
You prefer compliance?
I do prefer compliance.
Indeed, indeed. I quite understand. Well, it's Central Bank of the Bahamas' loss that she prefers compliance. And so, way to go. You're definitely in the right place. Okay. Annie Hepburn. Two Annies. Annie Hepburn?
Good morning.
Good morning, Annie.
This is another first. I believe I'm the first one in the surveillance department in the casino in the Bahamas to do a compliance course.
Wow. I think so. Never heard it before. And
Never
I've been
heard it.
doing this for a long time.
And the number one question to me is why in the world would you do that?
Yeah,
How
why
does
in the
that
world?
sound?
That is the question.
About 5 years ago, after being in the gaming industry for 30 years, about 5 years ago, I now work in Bimini in the surveillance department. So we got a compliance officer, and the surveillance and the compliance, we tend to bucket a lot.
Yes.
So
Now, Annie, without calling any names, just tell us the gory details, but don't call any names, because this is very important.
So I wanted to understand, because we are now doing a lot of SDRs, and I wanted to understand why it is that this was so important based on my job description. And he always tried to explain to us that we needed to go deeper, deeper, deeper.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. The casino became a financial institution in 2014, 2015, right?
Yeah.
And so now we are mandated to do more work as
Yes.
far as money laundering.
Right.
And I really needed to understand what washing was and all this stuff. Because if the number one thing I think that most of us didn't understand, if you and I went to Vegas and we're gambling, we're
Yes.
friends,
Yes.
you lose your money, why can't I give you $5,000 in chips to play? So
Right.
we're buddies. You are the money, and I want to give you some money.
Right.
What's the problem? But it is a problem, and so I had to understand why was that considered a possibility of money laundering.
Yes.
And
yes, keep talking.
And so I needed to do this class, and I began to understand right away. Now the pandemic happened, and of course, we're back in business and we're booming. So here comes up a patron with a bunch of small bills, wanted to change it for $100 bills. And I'm looking like, oh God, here we go, right?
Yes.
So now as a surveillance person, because the misconception of surveillance is that we're up there doing nothing.
Of course,
Just
sleeping.
sitting there doing nothing.
Sleeping,
But,
drinking wine,
yeah,
and eating the
or
other
we
and
get
talking.
overpaid security, right?
Yeah.
But we don't discuss our job, and it's very deep. But
Yes.
this particular patron came in just the other day, and I'm like, oh God, here we go. This is SDR. Is this an SDR? So I have to follow him and make sure he's not washing.
Yes.
So now I'm understanding. Okay, what is he doing? Is he gonna feed this machine these $100 bills, or he's just gonna feed it and take out a ticket and go and return it to the cage for bigger bills, or what is he gonna do? So I began to understand that yes, this is an SDR because he's gonna change about 10,000 in 20s, because they can come right off their boat with a bag full of money.
Yes.
And so what is he gonna do? So it's my job to watch and see if he's gonna wash. What is he? And if he's gonna play.
Yes.
But from the onset of it, just from a cashier's perspective, if they allow them, because management gets involved and they say, yeah, let him do it or whatever. But from a cashier's perspective, is that cashier gonna do an SDR?
Right.
Now I'm gonna watch him the whole entire time to know what he's doing. But from the onset, although management said, yes, give it to him, he can change it for $100 bills or whatever, is the cashier gonna take responsibility and follow an SDR?
Yes.
So I see it from now a whole different ballgame.
Yes. Interesting.
So it has benefited me so far. I was a little intimidated when everybody introduced themselves, because now I'm the only one from surveillance. I'm not even in gaming board. I'm not even an inspector. So boy, I'm gonna have a challenge. All these people in the financial sector, all these people are attorneys. So I'm a little intimidated.
No need.
But it has helped me It has helped me tremendously with dealing with my job.
And it will continue to help you because it is no secret that the casino is a major source of washing money, depending on where the casino is, what the regulations are, how they are enforced, and who can be paid off to look the other way. It's no secret, including the cashier that we're waiting to get the STR from, and maybe somebody in surveillance who's not you, being non-compliant and asked to look the other way. Whatever the case might be, this information can only continue to serve you in that capacity. And as you do more and more and get more and more involved in the concepts of this particular this course, you'll see a whole lot of things that will open your eyes, just as you've been saying already. All right, the issue of STRs is a major issue worldwide. And so whether or not persons who are reporting transactions as being suspicious in a real sense is a major bone of contention every single day. Are we reporting them just because we're trying to get out of something that could potentially happen in the future? Are we really suspicious? Are we ignoring certain suspicions because we know the person, we know the manager, we know, or whatever the case might be? All right, so you are definitely in the hornet's nest, whether you realize it or not. And in that surveillance area in the casino, don't be surprised if you're called upon to make certain other judgments going forward, and to wonder, just as you wondered about those STRs, because you're right on the money. Okay, are we really reporting all the STRs we should based on what we think is going on, whether it's at the management level, the middle level, or the teller level? Okay, so yes, you are definitely in the right place. And all I can tell you is, like the rest of your colleagues, maybe more so, because you're already in the hornet's nest. Some of them are trying to get into the hornet's nest. Be assured, and I'm happy. I'm so happy that you mentioned this local Bahamian topology with regards to what can potentially happen in the casino environment. A lot of people are not even aware that money laundering can even occur in the casino environment, when in fact the truth is it happens all the time, all over the world. Okay, so yeah, thank you for that information, Annie, and keep on trucking. That is a very serious job you're in. Make no mistake about it. Okay, and you will see more and more of how this stuff will open your eyes as time passes. That's all I can say. Hang in there and and hold your horses, because sometimes you may even be called upon to have to make some decisions, like going to somebody and saying, doesn't that look suspicious to you? Shouldn't we report that to the FIU? Anybody ever heard about the FIU?
Yes.
Don't we know that the law requires that the moment you feel or see a suspicious transaction, anyone in the organization is required to be reported to the FIU? And if it's discovered that you ought to have seen or reported a suspicion and you didn't, that the FIU can then take certain actions against financial institutions and others by law. So yes, Annie Hepburn, no need to be intimidated at all. Hold on to your horses, because you are definitely in the hornet's nest. Okay, and in surveillance too, where you ought to see, where you be seeing some stuff every day. Man,
every day.
I don't envy you at all. You could keep that bloody job. It's a very sensitive job, and it can get very tricky, depending on. That's all I'll say about that. I'm like you now. I cannot disclose anything more than that. So those of you who heard Annie's story, welcome to the world of compliance. Okay, for sure. All right, thank you very much again. Very, very good stuff. Maria, are you there? Maria Wells. Okay. O'Shea, while we wait for Maria to come back.
Good morning.
Morning, O'Shea.
I work in the financial services sector, in the commercial bank. I was interested in compliance. I read up a bit on it and I took the intro course and I realized that this is something that I want to do. So I'm using this course as a stepping stone to start my career in compliance.
Sounds good. You're definitely in the right place. And remember, I told you, you can be a compliance officer in a financial institution and you can be a compliance officer in a non-financial institution. Interestingly enough, a lot of non-financial institutions seem to think that they don't need a compliance officer. Truth of the matter is they do. Well, how soon they'll start taking on compliance officers and that, because see, they think that their accountant or their financial controller or their CFO is the same as a compliance officer. Truth of the matter, they're not. And they should not be doing that job dually anyway. It's a conflict of interest. How the hell can the CFO or financial controller, for example, see themselves? How can the legal department, who might be doing some illegal stuff, see themselves? They won't. And so compliance is designed to create an independent body or individual who can look at the organization from a distance and then report to the board as appropriate. Of course, if the organization has a board that is corrupt in any form or fashion, then the compliance officer person has another problem. Because now who do you report the board to? Or certain board members who may be behaving, or senior management persons who may be behaving inappropriately. And if they are, how did you identify the inappropriate behavior? And then who are you going to report it to without losing your something? But you're still required to do it, even though you might lose something. That's what makes this job so fascinating. Okay? What you decide to lose is an individual decision, but you would have seen by now in the context of your studies and in the discussions we will have with regards to governance, which is such a crucial part of all that stuff you've learned before. This governance thing, man, this is a whole different ball game, because now this takes all the academic stuff you learned before and asking you, in whatever capacity you're in compliance, to do something about it. Do something. And that's a little tricky. All right? Just as Annie said earlier, she's surveilling and she's watching people go to change 20s to 100, a bag of 20s to 100s. And does that create any suspicion with the teller? Maybe or maybe not. Depends on whether the teller has been trained as required by law for financial institutions to recognize suspicious transactions and the procedures for reporting them. So that's the next thing, Annie. All of a sudden now, I don't know how the hell you're going to do it, but somewhere along the way, somebody needs to know, as they should, that the tellers should be trained, if they're not, to report suspicious transactions and how to do it. So that's a whole different kettle of fish. Again, depending on the culture of the organization, which is another thing we'll discuss later, how we go about actually doing that. So compliance, very, very dynamic, very sensitive area. And so all of you who are looking to go into it, it's a very noble, that's like law and accounting and all the other stuff. It's a very noble profession in terms of if you're doing the job right, it has a great, great responsibility and importance. Okay? Because now you become a super watchdog of some kind that is different from the other watchdogs, like the auditors, internal and external auditors. You're not them, but you are a watchdog like them, but in a different capacity. On my mind. All right. Way to go, Shay. Welcome aboard. You've only just begun. Anybody knows that song? You've only just begun. Okay. Omar.
Hi, good morning again.
Good morning, yes.
I'm Omar Neely. I'm a police officer. I'm attached to the Financial Crimes Investigation Branch.
Yes,
Also on the board of directors at the Law Enforcement Cooperative Credit Union.
yes.
I thought to enroll into the course so that I could enhance my compliance skills and be better able to serve both organizations.
Well, all I can tell you, Omar, Neely, is because you're a police officer, because you're part of Law Enforcement Credit Union, and because you are actually on their board, you are definitely in the right place, because we're going to be talking about board members extensively. And whether you like it or not, that will include you and your people, because board members, from a compliance perspective, are required to do certain specific things for their organizations. And I believe, like casinos, credit unions are now considered financial institutions, correct?
Right, indeed.
Just like any other financial institution. So now, once upon a time when credit unions were just there to accommodate its members and everybody had a happy time, did whatever they wanted, and they did it pretty well, apparently, to some extent, because credit unions are stronger than ever. But now you have an added responsibility. You're no longer just a credit union. Like in the old days, you're now a financial institution, which means that people like the bloody central bank, who's the regulator in this group? Yeah, our regulators are now watching you, asking you to do stuff, asking you to prepare policies and procedures, asking you to adhere to certain sanctions and behaviors. And so now you guys are in the thick of things. And as a board member, Omar, you are definitely in the right place to understand what your responsibilities are as a board member at the credit union, which is now a financial institution. Okay, so hang in there and stay close to the information. All of a sudden, it will apply for the next couple of weeks directly to your position and the position of all your board members. And if you don't come out of it with a different perspective, I don't want to say something is wrong, because you will, for sure. All right, so you are definitely in the right place. Welcome aboard. Okay, Shari Belafonte.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Shari.
Good morning. I am currently in the financial industry, private banking,
Okay.
private bank. And my background is in fund, investment fund administration, trust administration, and trust management,
Oh, yes.
and relationship management.
Yeah, all the
And
areas where the compliance issues. Sorry, keep
go
going.
ahead.
Keep going.
Yeah, so that's my background. I've been working in those areas for a number of years.
Okay.
And I recently transitioned last year, the beginning of last year, into risk and compliance with more so on the risk side.
Yes.
And I had an interest. I wasn't required to take this course, but I had an interest in it because when you're making all of the risk assessments and dealing with risk management, you have to know the products and services of the industry, but you also have to know the downsides of the industry and knowing how to detect certain things, especially with AML and CFT risk exposure.
Indeed.
So I really did it for my personal development and also to get a better understanding to be able to do my job better.
Sounds good to me. It's unfortunate that some organizations are still not saying how this is relevant to the kind of work that you do. It is absolutely relevant. As a matter of fact, it is relevant to more people than we care to say at the moment, and especially in financial institutions and outside of financial institutions, but specifically financial institutions. So that was a good decision. One of the areas that people still don't talk about as much as they should is the issue of risk, as you said, in terms of products and services and clients and jurisdictions, and how they can impact your organization. And when you see them, what you do about them, they create oftentimes many kinds of suspicious transactions. See, back to that word again, and these words, suspicious transactions. And we know by law that if you work anywhere in financial services and you see a transaction that you believe is suspicious of any kind, you have a responsibility to report it to your money laundering reporting officer, who has the responsibility to assess it, and if it has any substance at all, to send a report to the FIU
And
for further analysis. Yes.
just to add something to what you're saying, also in my field with risk management, you have to also, and within my function, you have to also be able to manage and assess the compliance officer and the mill road to see whether or not they're complying with their job and they're performing the functions. Because sometimes you can even have corrupt compliance officers and mill rows. So it's important to detect that. And the person who assesses me would be the internal auditor. But the risk officer works along with the board to make sure that they assess and identify any risks that the company may have to save money. So we don't make the money, but we save companies a lot of money.
Indeed. It's interesting that you've highlighted a very unspoken set of points about the risk person watching the compliance and MLRO. It's not specific to compliance and MLRO. They just happen to be part of the people side of risk management, because we know that risk management involves quite a number of areas within the organization. The primary ones being people and products. By all means, people are all the persons who work in the organization potentially, and customers who are outside of the organization, and of course, any products that can present money laundering and terrorist financing issues. So yes, internal audit watches risk, and risk watch MLROs and compliance officers and everybody else in the organization, and MLROs and compliance officers watch other people in the organization, and everybody's watching everybody, and that was the general idea. The hope that since everybody is responsible and watching and complimenting everybody in terms of trying to do the right thing, that's where the issue of governance comes in. Then hopefully the organization will meet its objectives to stay away from damaging behavior. Okay? For those of you who may wonder what damaging behavior is, there are tons and tons of stories online about banks and financial institutions and auditing firms that have been fined millions and millions of dollars for non-compliance, and all kinds of other stuff that they shouldn't be doing, not listening to regulators, ignoring instructions from the regulators and others who are supposed to be watching them and giving them instructions on how to improve their organizations. They're not listening, they get fined, they come back and get fined again, all kinds of crazy stuff. So yeah, we need all this stuff where everybody's watching everybody, so that hopefully we can minimize the risk and reputational and financial damage to our organizations. So yes, Shari, you're like Annie and some others in the hornet's nest. People are watching people, and everybody's watching everybody. As a matter of fact, in case you didn't know, in accounting, that is what we call an internal control, where jobs are assigned so that everybody's job complements the other one. No one signature, you have two or three. You have segregation of duties. It's all kind of tied into that stuff so that nobody gets antsy and decide to do something, even though people still get together and do it anyway. The idea is to minimize it as much as possible. All right, so good luck, Shari. You two are in the hornet's nest, but what the hell? Somebody has to be in the hornet's nest. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Shakita.
Hi, good morning. Shakita
morning.
Debo. I'm a junior attorney at Davis & Co. I work more in the commercial and real estate area.
Yes.
I'm doing this course more so for personal development.
Yes.
And to find a new career path when my firm life is done. So, yeah.
Indeed. For many of us, we don't understand what firm life means, but it's interesting as a youngster, you already understand what firm life means. And so that's all we'll say about that. And you're definitely making the right decision in terms of compliance anyway, to help you along when you decide that firm life is enough and you're going to look at some other interesting things in your life. All right, so yeah, you're definitely in the right place. I'm sure you've seen already that this stuff encompasses a whole lot of stuff that any attorney, even those in the firm, can find very useful. And if you decide to move out of the firm and go into some other interesting and crazy places, you'll find it to be even more interesting.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the firm, we have their own compliance officer and MLRO, and so therefore, you only see the boring stuff like preparing documents and investigating. And then afterwards, this is getting a little tiresome. I need some excitement. I need to drop the bomb on something. Well, compliance is definitely the place for excitement. All right, way to go, Shakita. Good
Thank
stuff.
you.
All right, Simone.
Hi, good morning. I currently work at the Compliance Commission, and prior to that, I was at a real estate / development company, and that's where I was really introduced to compliance for the first time. So I took the introductory course offered by BIFS, and I went on to intermediate. And I guess taking those two courses really confirmed that I had an interest in the area, and I think that that's really what actually put me in a better position to be where I'm at right now at the Compliance Commission. So, yes, I'm hoping to continue to advance my career by completing this course.
That sounds good, and you definitely are on the right path. In case you didn't know it, you are a bloody regulated like D'Andrea. Because for those of you who don't know, the Compliance Commission carries out some very specific compliance functions that are a little compliance, but still different from, say, the Central Bank of the Bahamas and the Securities Commission of the Bahamas. The Compliance Commission, they have their eyes on another group of people, right, Simone?
Yes.
Can you share a couple of those people groups that the Compliance Commission might be looking at for your colleagues who might not even have an idea that there is a Compliance Commission at all?
Right. So we would cover what we consider to be designated non-financial business and professions. So those would include your accountants, your lawyers, your real estate brokers and developers, and also your dealers in precious stones. So that would be people like, John Bull, Colombian Emeralds. Yeah, so those are the categories that we cover.
Indeed. So the national financial institutions are now covered under the Compliance Commission. So now they can go out and see what the attorneys are doing, what the accountants are doing, what the real estate people are doing. Because for you guys who are in compliance or looking to get in compliance, make a mistake that money is laundered all the time through real estate, all the time. In fact, we haven't begun to unearth or expose or disclose, even in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, a small country, the level of money laundering that potentially occurs in real estate alone. If a guy is a drug dealer and he wants to buy a piece of property on the beach out west or on the Family Islands or something and he pays cash, what should the real estate agent do? Should they report it? Or should they just take the cash and say, thank God, another sale? Okay, so it gets a little tricky. Should they that the put the money in the bank and send a wire or write a check or whatever, draft, whatever the case might be? See, and they said, man, all I have is cash. I want to pay cash. I want to put it in the bank. So then all of a sudden you have a suspicious transaction. Should they report it? Did they report it? Are they going to ever report it? And so on. So that this Compliance Commission thing, I don't know if they realize yet how much of a hornet's nest they're responsible for overseeing. I'm sure they do. So as you can see, all of a sudden this compliance thing is a big old thing. And this is just the Bahamas. We're just like a dot on the map. And this is the same stuff that's going on everywhere in the world. That's the other thing. If you're a compliance person and you have experience and education and training in compliance, you can, just like other professions like law and accounting and medicine and engineering and plumbing. Is plumbing a profession? Yeah, yes, it is. For some reason, though, we don't like to think about it that way. it is not only is it a profession, it is a very serious profession, except that we don't tend to pay attention to that profession until what?
Something happens.
Ah, and then scrambling around trying to find a plumber. And then suddenly they're the most important thing in life as the flooding keeps going. The whole house is flooded. The doggone this is flooded. Then all of a sudden, oh, thank God, a professional. And then after the problem is resolved, you're just a plumber. You can leave now. Can I pay you less money than you said? Because you're just a somebody has to be the devil's advocate. That's me today. All right. So yeah, way to go, Simone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, too.
Sharing that information, that DNP thing. A lot of people are not even aware of the DNP, non-designated financial institutions. Interestingly enough, including even some compliance people, they're not aware of the non-designations. Okay, so if you guys are in compliance and you're interested in the world of compliance, then you should go online and check out the non-designations that the compliance commissions look at. Those real estate companies, accounting firms, lawyers who don't want to disclose anything. Lawyers are fighting all over the world to not disclose, and countries and governments are all trying to get lawyers to talk. Lawyers are attorney, privilege, and so we don't want to talk. But
Right. I was going to add that becomes a challenge too when you start to, kind of get into that privilege that exists between attorney and their client. And another point I wanted to make, Simone, perhaps you can interject here. Is it difficult to regulate the real estate firms or the real estate companies where the majority of their funds depend highly on commissions? Do you find that to be difficult to regulate them?
No, not so much. I think that probably I know that my boss was saying that prior to, I believe real estate only came under our watch, I think maybe as of 2019. So prior to that, all of the persons in real estate, they questioned it and they wondered, what's the point of us doing this? Why do we need to be regulated? But at this point, I believe that everybody's seeing the benefit. So we're not having too much of a difficulty.
indeed.
Okay.
And yeah, and of course, every kind of regulation has its unique problems. But the whole point of the matter is the fact that these DNs can know now, designated entities know now that somebody's coming potentially to check them. We're not saying that they're up to no good. We're just saying that don't be up to no good. Because when somebody comes to check, if they find out you're up to no good, then you're gonna have a problem. And like every other kind of regulation, it's not really designed to make people miserable. It's just designed to keep people thinking about doing the right thing. Okay. And the whole idea is anywhere you go in this environment of compliance, anybody who has a big time stinky question about why you harassing me about these things, raises suspicion right away. You need a suspicion action report for that even. Because like, what's the problem? If you're doing the right thing, what's the problem?
Right.
Okay. And so that makes regulators and auditors and others suspicious right off the top. Right. Just like walking into these NPOs and non-profits like churches and charities. They're like, we're a charity. Why are you harassing us? Why do you want us to register the government? We're a church. Why are we asking God's house to register the government to say that we exist? Well, if you're God's house, then what's the problem? If you're God's house, you should produce a financial report every year for your membership and tell them exactly where God's money went, correct?
Agreed.
Or am I the only elephant in the room here? It's a compliance issue.
I agree.
Okay, but for the most part, you can't get churches to disclose their finances. They'll fight you and tell you God's going to charge you and you're going to get up with leprosy or something, some nonsense. But in fact, if you're running God's house, then you should have no concern about disclosure because it's not your money anyway, is it? The only thing that you should disclose, not want to disclose publicly, is your personal money. But if it's the membership tithes and offerings, then what's the problem? So my point is, in all these, even in all these non-designated and other entities, NPOs, it's the same kind of problem. And this is why all these things are now coming up, because for a long time, nobody even questioned these areas. And thank God for money laundering issues, because I'm sure many of you know that money can be laundered through charities. Don't you know that by now?
Yes.
Yes.
See, don't let the name charity fool you. We think that because it says charity, that they're all doing the right thing. They are not all doing the right thing. We think because it's a church, they're all doing the right thing. They are not all doing the right thing. Some of them are laundering money. Some of them are stealing money. Some of them are financing terrorism. Some of them are hiding illegal immigrants. All these are compliance issues. Whether it's from a police perspective, a defense force perspective, a financial institution perspective, it's all compliance issues. My. Did I say you guys are in the hornet's nest? Absolutely. Somebody has to be in the hornet's nest, and that's you. Thank God somebody wants to be in the hornet's nest. Imagine if you guys didn't want to be in the hornet's nest. What would have happened? Okay. I see police officers going, and when I'm cruising home from work in the afternoon, they're speeding to some nonsense. Somebody doing some nonsense, putting their lives on the line every day. Omar?
Yes, indeed.
And this me, thank God that they want to take on that compliance responsibility, that risk. See, same stuff we're talking about, different environment, but the same concept. It all applies from a different perspective. Because I sure as hell wouldn't want to be the one driving to whatever nonsense that is, with a bunch of crazy people doing crazy, illegal, criminal stuff. So my hat's off to them. Same thing with the defense force guys in the middle of the ocean, fighting with all kinds of crazy stuff. Compliant, just trying to keep things compliant. Keeping illegal immigrants out, drug dealers out, money launderers out, all these people involved, all kinds of predicate issues. Human smuggling. Kiss my foot. This is no small matter you guys are venturing into. No matter what the posse it is, very serious stuff. But thank God you want to do it, because if you didn't, what would we do? We'd be in trouble. So I say to you, keep on trucking. Somebody has to do this crazy stuff to keep things balanced. Okay? And so every minute you spend in this environment, it is not a waste of time. It is all designed to arm you to be able to deal with that crazy stuff out there that you're dealing with in the world of compliance and governance and ethics and law. My. All right. Okay, I think it's Simone who started all that with DNP and some other people. All right, thank you, Simone. Sheena, are you there?
Hello.
Hey, Sheena, hello, let it rip.
Boy, I've heard several people by now say that they felt out of place because everybody is in the financial services, and it came about that they kind of were connected to what we're doing. I think I'm really the only one who has absolutely no occupational connection to this
Are you sure?
topic at all.
Okay, well, let's prove it. Where do you work?
I am an educator.
Okay, you're an educator.
Yes.
So if you're an educator, Sheena, what the hell are you doing in this environment?
I know, right? I am looking to expand my occupational choices, I guess.
You mean you're planning to leave teaching?
Yes.
We don't need any more people to leave teaching. Sheena, what the hell? I'm glad you mentioned that we don't need anybody to leave teaching, Sheena.
I have reached the phase of life where I think that I've given all that I can give to this profession. So I am looking to expand my horizons, broaden my horizons.
I understand.
Completely flee the entire jurisdiction of education.
Yeah. How long have you been teaching?
11 years.
Only 11 years? You look like you just came out of high school.
No, prior to education, I have worked for Ministry of Works,
Okay.
BTC, it was Batelco then,
Okay.
and water and sewage.
Okay.
So I had some interaction, some experience in the accounts department.
Okay.
I was pointed in this direction by a friend who she works in law.
Yes.
She took the course a few years ago and she figured that it would be something that I would be interested in due to my interests, my personal interests, because I'm very much a person who likes to be up to date with the things, world current events, and especially when it came to things like the financial industries and the business industries and how it worked and how everything was connected and development in that area.
Yeah.
So she pointed me
Well,
to it.
you
And
know, you know what, Shana? Now that you put it that way, while I hate to see you leave the teaching profession, period, because teaching is such a noble and important profession. Like the plumber, we don't give it enough attention, money, or credit for what it's really all about. We just kind of take the whole bloody thing for granted. Like, really? They're just teachers. Really? Imagine if there were no teachers. Uh, it would be a nightmare of major proportions from preschool right up to postgraduate levels. It'd be a nightmare. But we
yeah,
still treat the teaching profession very casually for some reason. So I do understand. But from your additional conversation, I understand also that we have to be in areas that we feel we enjoy, we are drawn to, we think we'd love to do. And so it's important to be doing what we think we love to do. Because a lot of times we're doing jobs that are not jobs we love to do, even though they might be important. And so when we find an area that we believe will be more comfortable, more enjoyable, more productive, and so on, then yes, we do have to move in those areas. So I get it. It'll be a shame to see another good teacher leave education. But like my baby says, he's 24. It is what it is, Dad. As, as if he knows anything. He thinks he knows all kinds of stuff already. Gonna be a shock when he discovers that he doesn't know as much as he thinks he knows. All right, so way to go, Shana. I get that. Thank you for also adding that bit of information because it'll give some insight, I'm sure, to maybe some of your other colleagues who are kind of along those same lines in one form or another. But I sure as hell don't want that doggone what do you call it, virus to affect people like Omar. Because if Omar and company stop driving to these crazy stuff, then we're really in trouble. Or where is he? Defense Force. If he stopped being what he, then we're really in trouble. So yes, Shana, we get it, but we hope that doggone virus does not infect those other kinds of people, and they decide to run off somewhere. We can't afford it. We need them, whether we believe it or not. We need them. All right. So yes, you're in the right place, and good luck. I'm sure you'll be fine wherever that you go because you already have that foundation. All right, Yolanda, last but not least.
Sorry, I was speaking on mute. Good
No
morning,
problem.
guys.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm Yolanda, and I've been in the financial industry for about 15 years. I'm currently with City Trust Farmers Limited, in the global fee billing unit. We pay all the fees on behalf of the international trust centers. My interest in compliance was when I left Citibank for about 3 years, and I went to the Securities Commission. I spent 3 years at the Securities Commission, and that's what piqued my interest in compliance and regulations. And so now that I'm back to Citi, I decided to do the course to make myself more versatile within the bank.
Sounds good. You will not regret it. I'm sure your experience at the Securities Commission can only add to your resume and your ability to function even better. One of these days, they'll find that they need to take you from where you are and put you where you need to be in there, so you can add even more value to that maddening city environment. Back in the day, there was an expression about persons who about Citibank and those who work there in the city. It never sleeps. Do they still say that?
It still don't sleep. Trust me, Citi still don't sleep.
God, I can't believe after all these whatever decades it is, I won't say, that it's still the city that never sleeps. Fascinating. Some things do indeed remain the same. All right, good stuff. So whatever you get to do next in Citi Trust, whatever you will definitely benefit, I'm sure, from this program, no doubt. It just has so much information for all of us. Because remember, truth of the matter is, wherever we work, whether it's directly or indirectly, we're all responsible for compliance in one form or another, either directly or indirectly. So being tied up in a program like this can only add to your repertoire and your resume and your ability to do whatever the heck you're doing. Okay, so welcome aboard, everybody. Let me just say, while I remember, they didn't give me your contacts. If you guys can send me an email with your telephone contact, so that if I need to reach somebody or we have some issue and I need to make contact, I can do that. So after the class is over, please send me an email with your telephone contact so that I can have that available if I need it as well. All right. Any questions before we go on?
Good morning, Mr. Wilkinson. No questions. It's Jensen Curry. I'm just letting you know that I'm here. I arrived late for the class, and so I didn't get to introduce myself as yet.
Okay, Jensen. Excellent, excellent. All right, Jensen, let it rip. Introduce yourself.
Okay, yes. All right. So I have worked in the financial services industry for the past 12 years. As of the last 2+ years, I've been in a risk management or compliance related function. And this is really the space that I want to be in the long term, career-wise. And so I took this course just to enhance my current skills and to assist in my future career advancement within compliance. And so I'm looking forward to this aspect of the course.
You're definitely in the right place, Jensen. Welcome aboard. So you would have heard the story by Annie and some of our other persons out there in the real world, I imagine.
Yes, yes, I have.
All I can say is live and learn. Okay, those are some real life stuff that we won't even see in our textbook. We have other topologies in the textbook, but we have our own local topologies as well, interestingly enough. I was teaching an auditing class not too long ago through the Institute, and one of the questions that came up was, what, Mr. Wilkinson, what really happened at Bank of the Bahamas? I'm like, that's a local Bahamian topology. I wish one of these days somebody would write it up so we can use it in our future studies with our students who come on board to talk about compliance and other risk issues. But certainly Bank of the Bahamas, the whole Bank of the Bahamas resolve issue is a major risk compliance phenomena that for some reason we don't talk about much anymore. There's an old saying that Bahamians have short memories. But for those of you who are not aware, I'm sure there's some information around about what happened with that. But certainly there are a whole lot of compliance and risk failures that resulted in a whole lot of stuff moving on to what we now call resolve and trying to get Bank of the Bahamas back on its feet. All right, so maybe one day somebody will write up that topology so that we can use that as part of our studies going forward, just to show Bahamian students and others that, you know, every jurisdiction, every country has its unique topologies, and that this compliance thing is all encompassing. That's the point. All right, so welcome aboard, Jensen. You are definitely in the right place.
Thank you. I agree.
All right, for sure. Okay, so I see where you guys have already gone through some key modules, AML, CFT discussions. By now, you should have an idea of how to define money laundering and terrorist financing. Did you guys discuss proliferation at any point? Proliferation, ever heard that word?
Yes.
Yeah.
Weapons.
Yeah, what comes to mind when you hear the word proliferation in money
Yeah,
laundering?
I think we discussed proliferation financing earlier on. Basically weapons, funding, financing, trading, all of that stuff.
Yeah, funding, trading of weapons and weapons of mass destruction. It is now one of the new kids on the block that have been added to the AML issue, along with human trafficking and drug trafficking and all the other stinky stuff that accompanies money laundering. And so, well, even though, well, I shouldn't say that. Let me ask this. Do we have any kind of proliferation issues, financing or proliferation in the Bahamas? Or we too small to have that? We're too Christian to have that?
Yes, we do. We
We
most
do.
do.
Okay, where would you say we'd have proliferation financing in the Bahamas?
One of the things that comes to mind is the acquisition of illegal weaponry in the country.
Of course. Those guys that shot up the other 6 guys the other day, you guys heard about that?
Yes.
That's the most recent example of our level of madness. I don't know why that's gone so quiet all of a sudden. Because like we treated that like that was just like somebody chop somebody with conch shell and run or something. Remember, that's the old Bahamian expression. That's what we used to do in the old days when somebody got mad. We just pulse you with rock or something and run. That's how innocent we were. Okay? Or so every now and then somebody graduate from a little rock thing and then hit somebody with a conch shell in the back or something and run. And stuff like that. Now, because of proliferation, see that word? In our little country even, we have proliferation issues. I thought that was a North Korean, Iran kind of thing. Yeah, for major stuff, but we have our share of it here already. Okay? With this weapons, illegal sale of weapons in the Bahamas. Where are they coming from? We don't have any weapons manufacturers, do we? Does anybody know of any weapons
we don't.
manufacturers? Not that I know of. So where are they coming from? How are they getting in? So yes, we have that's what proliferation is all about on a smaller scale, okay? And certainly on a larger scale, it graduates all the way out to weapons of mass destruction, which can kill countries, God forbid, if somebody decides to press a button. You think pandemic is bad? All we need is one nut to press the button. Imagine that. So whether we realize it or not, we live in a proliferation environment that can trigger at any unexpected time while we're fighting with AML, terrorist financing, and all those other guys who are blowing stuff up everywhere. These are interesting times that you youngsters are living in. And it's only going to get more interesting and make your work that more important. That's really the point I am making. And that's why I'm backing up a little before we get into our discussion today. Because I'll tell you, the things we're going to discuss over the next couple of weeks are going to be very important. But what we've already talked about in our real lives and all this kind of stuff is already a whole couple of sessions that can last us something of a lifetime, because this is the real McCoy. Okay? All this academic stuff you're doing is important because it's going to raise your awareness some more, but nothing like some of that real McCoy stuff coming from persons and their experiences. All right. So yeah, that's proliferation, in case you're wondering. What about sanctions? Anybody ever heard about sanctions? Sanctions, what is that? Make a guess. When you hear the word sanctions, what do we mean? What are we talking about? How is that related to AML? Terrorist financing?
Well,
Proliferation?
sanctions were restrictions on business that could be conducted with certain entities or countries based on a will to, well, I guess, either punish or discourage them from their course of actions.
Indeed. Are there any sanctions currently against Iran?
Yeah.
North Korea?
Yes.
Yes. And a whole lot. They're the major culprits at the moment, we believe. But there are other sanctions against other countries for different reasons. For example, human rights issues. Interestingly enough, since we're compliance people, since we are compliance people, let's talk compliance. When the virus came out last year, most of the world said the virus came from where?
China.
Yeah, okay. Now what is most of the world saying? It came from where?
The US and United States.
Well, let me put it in Bahamianese. Now we're saying we know. Now let me ask you, Bahamian, something. What does we know mean in English?
Unknown source.
Yeah, we know means we don't know. So a year ago, we said it was from China. Now the world is talking like they're investigating it because they don't know where it came from. And nobody should blame China because we're not sure anymore. How did that happen? Compliance people. Now I just raised that so I can show you how complex it can become at the very level in your job, wherever you are today, or even at a what? International level. That's my point. How is it 1 year ago we knew it was from China, now nobody wants to say it's from China? As a matter of fact, Dr. Fauci said the other day, you guys know who Dr. Fauci is?
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, good. Dr. Fauci said 2 days ago that the United States and other countries should not continue accusing China of it anymore because that may make China mad and they may not cooperate in trying to find out where it came from. How about that? Okie dokie. I'm just talking to you guys from a compliance perspective. Furthermore, we all know, well, maybe not all of us, but some of us know that there's some major human rights violations in China, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah. But there are no sanctions against China for that. How come? Compliance people.
Well, I think because China is one of the economic powerhouses of the world, and whether we realize it or not, the stability and economy of China influences the stability and economy of other countries, particularly the United States. And to enact too many sanctions against China would actually have a ricochet effect on other countries that we might not be able to afford, basically.
Unfortunately. So if I'm rich enough, I should be able to get away with anything, including murder.
And that's why the Bahamas isn't rich enough, so we're not going to get away with tearing down the shanty towns, according to the UN.
Oh, so now we're coming back to another compliance issue.
And
See, I'm just trying to show you guys, if you think compliance is just a tick box that you tick off at work, be assured, it is not only that. That is only one aspect of compliance. We have this thing on a worldwide level, okay? How the hell they got to the Bahamas, the little dot on the map, and all those other countries all over the world, every major continent in the world has all these human rights and other issues. Then, how the heck, who called them in anyway? What are they doing here? And I didn't see any checkbook saying that this is several $1 million to build a location on Crown land to put them. Did you? No.
Nope.
And why are they messing with us in the middle of a pandemic when we don't even have enough money to feed citizens as we speak? We're still trying to stretch the doggone NIB money into September, whatever money we borrow just to feed Bahamians still. Well, all I can say is these are compliance issues. That's really why I raised them. And I raised it so that you understand that compliance is not just the box that you tick at work. It's an institutional and international issue.
Hi.
And so, question?
Yeah, I was actually trying to interject when you were talking about China and their sanctions because well, not the sanctions, the lack thereof, because you brought up North Korea earlier and their sanctions. But I don't know if a lot of people realize that the reason that North Korea's sanctions haven't been they haven't been very effective is because of China. China is their neighbor, and China is actually the main driving force behind North Korea. They're the ones that helping to bring in their foreign funds. They're the ones that are helping to do their trades and other things like that. So the UN is kind of fighting a war that they're not going to win against North Korea because the truth is they're being enabled by China, and they like to pick on smaller persons like us. But the truth is you have a big problem that you're not dealing with, and the whole world can see why it can't be dealt with.
Absolutely. I could not have articulated it any better myself. When we're going to wake up and smell the roses is beyond me, but it's hard to smell roses when you're in bed with the roses. And so we have a lot of people internationally and otherwise who are in bed with each other. And this in bed thing that she's talking about, in bed is just my expression, but that's what she's talking about. There is this relationship, and China is keeping a straight face like Chinese normally do, like it's not us. And we all know, who know anything at all, that there's a certain group of them, especially politicians, who cannot be trusted, even with their own mother. That's no secret. That is a historic fact. So yes, we have all these kinds of things going on, which is why we cannot resolve the problem. I just hope that it doesn't result in one worldwide explosion one day where the whole world is unfortunately devastated. That would be most unfortunate. We came closest to that when Hitler tried to take over the world and he was finally beaten back. I hope the next phase of that is not a nuclear phase where somebody decides I need to do something catastrophic before I, in Bahamianese, dead, DED, or other reason. So yes, these are all serious compliance issues. We don't call them compliance issues because compliance for those kinds of things kind of like a romantic word. But to keep it romantic, these are all compliance issues. There are other more stringent, more harsh words that we can call that international crazy stuff that plagues us, that endangers us every single day of our lives as we busy ourselves with our normal day-to-day stuff. But yes, that is a serious point you made. It is prevalent not only with the Chinese, but other countries like Russia, the US, and others. Everybody's playing that game. I just hope that these bedroom tactics do not result in the release of too many viruses. Sorry, that's my own little metaphor for a very serious situation. All right, thank you so much for raising that. Very serious stuff. All right. What do you guys understand by the risk-based approach to AML? What do you understand by that? the risk-based approach to AML? Anyone? Right. How do we apply risk to the AML issues that we're looking at? Should we just deal with everybody with the same slate, or should we be looking at situations depending on the level of risk that they present to us?
I think,
Sorry.
sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
think all money laundering and terrorism issues and all of the other financial crime issues they're risky, generally risky. But in terms of measuring them by risk, I think it's important to understand that, because once you do that, you know how to apply more stronger controls in certain areas, because not everybody is a criminal that comes into a financial institution. But you
Correct.
have to have an open mind to say, well, there are certain red flags that may tell you whether or not you have a greater risk exposure, or you have a
Indeed.
greater risk appetite concerning certain clients that you take on. So I think that's why it's important to have a risk-based approach.
Indeed. In other words, do not spread everybody with the same brush. Every customer, every situation that arises, you look at it on an individual level and deal with it on an individual level, depending on the risk that is associated with that person, whether it's the product they want, the service they want, the jurisdiction they're from, their background information, what information they're prepared to supply, what is in the media about them, and so on. All right, and everybody should be looked at in their own individual perspective. Okay, that's the ideal risk approach. All right, anything other than that is going to create all kinds of problems that we've already experienced. Dimitri, you had a thought.
Sorry, it was actually Jensen.
Sorry, Jensen.
Yes, she covered what I was going to say. It's basically the opposite of following a tick the box mindset in every situation. We'll treat each situation with the level of risk presented. If it's a higher risk, perhaps we'll employ more enhanced techniques. If it's a lower risk, maybe we would relax it, but there would always be a bare minimum, and then we would treat every scenario according to the level of risk.
Absolutely. And I think this is perhaps an area where organizations need to spend more time training their staff from the very bottom of the organization all the way up to the very top, so that and on a regular basis, we're required to do training at least once a year or more, but we certainly need to be keeping staffers aware and regulators and others aware that we need to now be looking at it from a risk-based perspective, so that we can be fair to those persons who want to do good business, and we can identify those who are seeking to put our organizations or even our country at risk. There's an interesting thing in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas about risk and the law, and the UN's visit and the compliance issues connected to that. Like the virus, once upon a time, a year ago, we said we were certain about where the virus came from and what was going on and all that kind of stuff. And then suddenly it's all nebulous and vague for some strange reason. Also, we had the whole UN come down and visit this little dot on the world called Nassau, about they're here to investigate the human rights issue. But nobody ever said that the same thing they came to investigate is the same thing that represents breaking the laws of the Bahamas. True or false?
True.
See, we have to be real. That's the problem with compliance. And that's what makes it so not only dynamic, but so contemptible to some people, because it drags you down to reality. So they're here to talk about the shanty towns, but they didn't say anything about illegal what? Immigration.
Yeah.
Now, how can you talk about, in the old days, we used to call that a forked tongue. Everybody heard about that? Forked tongue. Saying one thing from one side of your mouth and then saying or not saying something from the other side. And we seem to have forgotten, and notice when I say illegal immigration, notice I didn't call any nationality. Doesn't matter what nationality. Because I tell you, if any one of you go to an African, Indian, Middle Eastern, or any country illegally, what are they going to do with you?
Detain and deport.
And that's if they're the nicer countries. Some other ones you may never get back home.
That's right. They might imprison you.
Or even
kill, eradicate.
Exactly.
Yeah, they might imprison you and even kill you, which they've done to many illegals. So in a sense, we've been treating our illegals with what? Kid gloves, haven't we?
Yeah, with fair, with not necessarily fairness, but with compassion.
Big time compassion.
Yeah.
And it costs us a lot of money too.
We still seem to end up on the terrible end of the stick, despite the compassion.
Welcome to the real world for you future Bahamians who are going to have to deal with this vexing problem. This is a compliance problem as well. That's my whole point. Now notice, persons can break our laws and then come in, build houses, eat food, don't pay taxes and whatever that. You guys can't even go and supervise and steal a loaf of bread, correct? Correct?
Exactly. And they come and they squat on.
If you steal a loaf of bread, what will happen to you? They will arraign you before the courts, wouldn't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they will tell you it's against the law to steal, wouldn't they? And the penalty for stealing is X, wouldn't they?
Yes.
So if that applies to you who have broken the law, then why doesn't it apply to others who are outside of the Commonwealth who have broken the law? I'm going to leave that compliance questions with you guys, because see, that's part of governance too that we're going to be talking about, interestingly enough. All right.
I think enforcement in the Bahamas is an issue generally, but it's more obvious when it comes to foreigners.
Yeah. Yes, as it is an issue all over the world, depending on the politics, the power, the money, and the program. Welcome to the real world. Remember, if you're strong enough economically, have enough money and enough military might, you can even get away with murder. If you're not, you can't even get away with stealing a loaf of
bread.
Okay. What can I say? A word to the wise is still sufficient. All right. So that's all of the risk-based approach to money laundering. And then I think the last thing you probably talked about before governance, which is what we'll talk about, has to be, because of all those things we talked about before, we have to CDD, risk profile, and monitor. Okay. That's kind of the tail end of the watchdog approach to this whole process. And I call it the watchdog approach because CDD, risk profiling and monitoring, is all about watching and checking and seeing what's going on in order to figure out what the problems are, what the issues are with regards to our clients and their AML activities. And then, of course, the upcoming discussion about governance is going to be more like, okay, we've done all the watchdog stuff. Why don't we just be ethical and do the right thing? That's really what a good part of our discussion is going to be on the issue of governance. All right. So now all of that brings us to all of this. And that is, let me see if I can bring up, I think you guys, all of you guys have your notes, I hope.
Yes. Starting with unit 12 or?
Yes, unit 12.
Okay.
Okay, let me just see if I can bring up my screen so I can see what I need to see. Because that textbook was written clearly for persons with 20/20 eyesight. I don't think they have the rest of the world in mind, it appears. All right. So now we're into unit 12. And notice the topic of unit 12. It's all about the AML CFT governance perspective or framework. And of course, Before I go any further, what do you understand by governance anyway? Just before we get into it, when you hear the word governance now, what comes to your mind?
Oversight.
Yeah, oversight.
And management of all of the different areas in a business.
Absolutely, the management of all the different areas and departments and government departments and countries and so on. Okay, because remember, let's go back to Iran again. So we take it out of the firm for a minute again and go into the world again. Remember, the UN and company were trying to get some inspectors into Iran. Anybody remembers that? Anybody ever heard about that at all?
No.
Yeah. So just for your information, once upon a time and for on many occasions, they've been trying to get inspectors from the UN into Iran to see what's going on with their enrichment programs for making a nuclear weapon. They claim that they want to make one, but they want to make it for defensive purposes. And then on the other side of the mount, they're saying because they want to blow Israel off the map for some reason. Everybody's been trying to destroy Israel from the beginning of time. The Amalekites, the Jebusites, the Philistines, the Amalekites, the Hamas, the Dogon, Iran, Syrians. Everybody's been trying to destroy that little rock, just like our little rock for some reason. It's an interesting analogy. From the beginning of time, BC and AD, before Christ and after Christ. And nothing has changed. They still want to destroy. In fact, they were bombing her the other day again. And then when she defended herself, turned around and said that she is guilty of war crimes. But that's a whole other issue. So they're trying to get inspectors into Iran to see where their nuclear program is for real. The problem, and that's part of the CDD profiling, monitoring, part of the compliance. See, compliance again. Really what they went in to see if Iran was being compliant with the international standards with regards to the production of nuclear weapons, to see if there's any proliferation going on and so on. Very serious stuff, like North Korea, okay? And the reason why we're more curious about these countries because they're deemed to be more volatile than other countries, so to speak. But now sometimes they allow the inspectors in, other times they don't allow them in. When they allow them in, they only show them what they want to show them, and they don't show them what they do other things. So it's hard to monitor what these guys are doing. And so as a result of that, it creates a whole lot of uncertainty. But the idea is the countries like the US and the UN and all the other developed countries are trying, they say, to get countries like Iran and Korea, North Korea and others to, govern yourselves properly. Don't do stuff that's going to leave the world tentative about what you might do with nuclear weapons. We need to know what you're doing so that we could try and temper the situation in the world, because we don't want to get up one day to an explosion. And these guys saying, we'll never do that. We're just doing this in case you big, bad countries decide to bother with us, we could fight back. The truth of the matter is none of us knows what the hell's going to happen one fair day. But we keep our compliance monitoring and our compliance checking and profiling and all this stuff going so that at least, hopefully, we can keep countries thinking about governance issues, about doing the right thing. And that's on a countrywide level. Okay? A lot of what we're going to discuss is from an organization, entity-wide level. But I just want you to be sure that this risk is not restricted just to organizations and entities. Okay? This risk is real and it's worldwide, unfortunately. All right. So what are we going to be talking about in Unit 12? A couple of interesting things, none the least of which we call internal controls. I hope some of you have heard that expression before, designing internal controls so that organizations can have a compliance system that works. When auditors come in, they're required to audit the internal controls of organizations to see if they are sufficient for the particular entity or are there any weaknesses. Those organizations who have internal auditors, they go out and check departments and to see whether departments are following policies and procedures and all the internal controls that are put into place so that their company will not face any reputational, financial, and other losses. Okay, so that's one of the areas we're going to look at. Also, we're going to look at, to some extent, the board of directors and senior management, how they should conduct themselves with regards to AML CFT, and making sure that the compliance systems work, because without their involvement, systems will never work well. Remember, there's an old saying, if the top is out of order, then everything after is going to be out of order in one form or another, or eventually suffer some kind of indignity. So we're going to look at boards and senior management people, see what their roles ought to be. Okay. What else? Some what we refer to as multidisciplinary approaches to compliance. That's a big long word to what we'll see. And then finally, another important area for you guys, some of the skills and attributes that are connected to those persons who are designated to be money laundering reporting officers. In some organizations, the compliance officer and the MLRO are the same person. The regulators do allow that in certain circumstances, but not all. There's some organizations where that can work, perhaps, maybe small organizations, but in medium-sized and large organizations, it is always preferred that the MLR and compliance person are two different people and or departments. Okay? Because in a sense, those two functions, though they have some similarities, they carry out some very different things, especially the MLRO. Okay? So that's where we're going. And I think I've yapped enough for the moment, for the morning. So I'm going to start right at the very top of my list. Angela, are you there, Angela? Angela's gone off for an early morning martini. Okay, Annie Curtis, are you there?
Hi, I'm here, but I'm having some trouble downloading my manual.
Oh, is that Annie or Angela?
This is Annie.
Okay, that's fine. Keep downloading, Annie. I'll just go down to Dandria. She'll pinch it until you're ready later. Dandria, are you there?
I'm here, but I'm mobile. I don't have access to my text at this time.
No problem. Just listen in then. Continue.
Yeah, I'm listening in.
That's fine.
This is Angela. Angela's here.
Angela's ready. Okay, Angela. Why don't you begin with the managing of AML CFT compliance risks right at the very beginning. As we have seen.
Okay, you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's no problem. As we have seen in Unit 8, one of the fundamental obligations of senior management is financial services business is the creation of a system of internal controls to effectively manage risks. This includes compliance risk. In the control of financial services, compliance risk can be defined as the risk of legal or regulatory sanctions and the financial and reputational loss that may be suffered as a result of a failure to comply with laws, regulations, and other standards of good practice.
So for those of you who are not sure what compliance risk was before, now you know. You have no excuse. All right, keep going, Angela.
AML CFT compliance risk is a subset of the wider area of compliance risk, specifically pertaining to failing to comply with the laws, regulation, and other standards of good practice in respect of mitigating the risk that your firm will be used for money laundering, terrorist financing, or weapons proliferation financing. It also includes the serious risk that your firm will breach financial sanctions, legislation, and requirements. The system of governance implemented must be capable of protecting the interests of various different stakeholders. There is a single international model, and accordingly, there can be no one-size-fits-all situation to design of internal compliance systems. Nonetheless, we can identify key themes and common factors to be taken into account when designing compliance systems and controls. These include internal and external factors.
Okay, stick a pin again a moment, Angela. So notice what she said. One or two key things. This thing about compliance, there's a common denominator, and that common denominator is called good practice. There's another synonym for that in our business. It's called good governance. If you haven't seen that expression before, you'll see it somewhere along the way. So this good practice, good governance concept has been implemented by the OECD, FATF, CFATF, and all the rest of the world, so to speak, to what we call mitigate against the risk that any particular firm or even government, God forbid, might somebody's mic is open. Okay, great. To mitigate against the risk that your firm or even your country might be experiencing. Before I go on, let me ask a question. Is there any risk to the Bahamas of the UN coming down to visit us personally? Is there any risk there? Anyone?
You're talking about the United Nations coming to visit the Bahamas?
Yeah, is there any risk as a result of that to the Bahamas?
I think so. I think there's reputational risk.
There is definitely reputational risk. Is that an important risk?
Yeah, because clients look at that too when they think about where they're going to invest their assets and their money.
Yeah, clients
That
look
could
at
hurt
that.
us financially and also could hurt us with trades and business with other countries.
Absolutely. So you see, all of a sudden, we're not even off the first page yet. And if we are keen enough, we can take that most recent incident in the Bahamas, another topology for us, that could become a problem, even though it may not be immediately visible. But then most of the big problems in life are not always immediately visible. That's the problem. All right? Most of us don't find out we have cancer until the cancer is moving along at a rapid pace for some reason, unless we get lucky. So all too often, the big problems do not start off with a boom. They start off quietly with what appears to be a harmful visit to the doggone illegal immigrants situation in the Bahamas. Then all of a sudden, we are in everybody's mouth around the world that we are mistreating people. See, nobody's going to say illegal immigrants, and nobody has any facts that we're mistreating anybody. As a matter of fact, we probably treat people, illegal immigrants and refugees, better than anyone in the world, perhaps to some extent other than the United States, UK, and Canada, maybe. No doubt about it. Sweet old Bahamians. We're still so nice, aren't we? Friendly, calm, quiet, peaceful, non-belligerent people. Isn't that wonderful? And so, yes, that kind of stuff can wreak havoc on us in the medium to short to medium term, and even the long term. And I just hope that we don't have to deal with that as well. We have enough problems. I mean, we need to get to the UN and find out what brought them to the Bahamas in the first place, and try and find some way to mitigate that so we don't have to deal with that anymore in the near future. That is a big problem, potentially, for us, okay? For sure. And then, of course, for our neighbors in the Caribbean, it sends the wrong message, even though they know better. They know that the Bahamas has been the sweetest to any illegals anywhere in the world. They know that, but still, it has all kinds of potential problems. And so we can see right away that this thing about good practice, that thing about them flying down to the Bahamas, that's not good practice. If they had some information, they should have contacted the relevant Bahamian authorities and have a discussion with us and do it right. That's like, imagine our foreign affairs people flying into China and say, we had to investigate the human rights issues. We heard that a couple thousand Chinese have disappeared. What would they do to us? Well,
They'll laugh you out of town.
absolutely. If you get to leave town, not everybody might return. Somebody might, or two or three might disappear. That's how serious these things are. So yes, all right, that's an excellent example, and it's an unfortunate one, but it's a very relevant one. Okay? So here we are now in the midst of trying to figure out how to exercise good governance, and then how to keep others from suggesting that we're not, and then how to deal with others who are not exercising good governance. I don't envy regulators anywhere in the world. It's a big time job. And what makes this governance thing so critical is that, as she said, no one hat fits all. Every jurisdiction, every country has its right and wrong, but the way they approach it, manage it, is a whole different ballgame. So whatever we're doing in the Bahamas, we can't even do in another Caribbean country, not to mention another Western country, not to mention another Eastern country, not to mention another South American country, not to mention. So this is very complex. The only thing that's not complex about it is what the difference between right and wrong. And some countries will tell you we have our own concept of even right and wrong. You said killing is wrong, but here in Africa, killing is relative, or whatever, or India, or wherever the hell it is. So all of a sudden, what we know to be blatantly an egg in some countries, I said, man, that's maybe how you think in the Caribbean, but in this part of the world, it is all relative. We want you to know that cutting up people is a natural thing for us. Man, and we're horrified in another jurisdiction. That is what makes the issue of governance so complex. No one hat fits all. We all have to come up with our own version to make it work the best we can. All right, Angela, keep going.
Okay, let me see where.
The bottom. Basil.
I think we lost my space.
Right,
okay, the Basel Committee. The Basel Committee, that's where you want me to start?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Basel Committee on Banking Supervision's January 2017 guidelines 287 on sound management of risks related to money laundering and financing of terrorism, although written specifically for banks, is a good reference guide for all financial institutions. For examples, in the introduction, the guidance advises that the inadequacy or absence of sound ML, FT risk management exposes banks to serious risks, especially reputational, operational, compliance, and concentration risks. Recent developments, including robust enforcement actions taken by regulators and the corresponding direct and indirect costs incurred by banks due to their lack of diligence in applying appropriate risk management policies, procedures, and controls, have highlighted those risks. These costs and damage could probably have been avoided had the banks maintained effective risk-based AML CFT policies and procedures. Continue?
Keep going.
It is worth noting that these risks are interrelated. However, in addition to incurring fines and sanctions by regulators, any of them could result in significant financial costs to the banks. Example, through termination of wholesale funding and facilities, claims against the bank, investigation costs, asset seizures and freezes, and loan losses, as well as the diversion of limited and valuable management time and operational resources to resolve problems.
Thank you very much, Angela. I think you've said a mouthful already.
Yes.
Yeah, this Basel thing, even though this happened some time ago, it's still relevant even today. Notice the great responsibility that is placed on financial institutions, where you guys work and where you propose to work. And even if it's not a direct financial institution, you're like a credit union, you're deemed to be. If you sit on the law enforcement board, you're deemed to be responsible in some way under governance. And so none of us essentially can escape the issue of compliance. It is all pervasive, even in our own households. We have to deal with compliance issues with our family members and friends. Some of us have some family members who have some serious compliance issues, some serious risk-related issues. And some of them are so serious that we need to disassociate ourselves from certain family members. Otherwise, they're going to drown us. And if you disassociate, they'll say, who do you think you are for disassociating? And tell them it's nothing personal, just practicing some compliance I learned on Saturday. And they're like, really? What you mean? Reach your family, them. And I'm like, I know. But based on the risk-based analysis that I've done since that class I did, I don't know about that. I'm still your family, I still love you guys, but I think you should stay over there, and I'm gonna stay over here, because I don't want to deal with the reputational and other issues that could be connected. And I just say that simply to say that this thing about compliance is pervasive. It is not just the firm that you work for. And notice the Basel statement puts the full responsibility on financial institutions. You guys have to make sure that you are the gatekeepers. Because of you, things didn't go as well as they should. We expect you to do more so that they can be better. Okay? And as a result of that, financial institutions can face all kinds of problems, including the freezing of funds, loan losses, and all kinds of stuff connected to their clients and the organization as a whole. So this thing is big. And students have asked me many times in the past, like, what's the best way to deal with it? And I'm like, the best way to deal with it is just to follow the rules to the best of your ability and try to do that which is right. If somebody tries to bribe you, don't take it. If somebody tries to persuade you by doing some other things, don't do it. If you see something happening that is detrimental to your organization and ultimately you may have to report it. If you see a suspicious transaction, you should report it. That's how you put a dent into this. Is that going to get rid of it overnight? Hell no. This stuff has been around since Methuselah, since King Hammer was a hatchet. Not going to go anywhere anytime soon. But our responsibility is to try to mitigate as much as we can and keep it as much to a minimum in our environments as we can. You know, there's an old saying that when the worst thing than not fixing anything is when good people do nothing. In this case, we can substitute good with compliance people, MLRO people, governance people, and so on, ethical people, and in terms of trying to fight this ever-present monster. All right, thank you very much, Angela. Annie, Curtis, are you there?
I'm here, Mr. Wilkinson. I still haven't been able to get it downloaded.
Okay, no problem, Annie. I'll get back to you later. Not a problem. Andrea, you're still on the road, yes?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Dimitri, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, Dimitri, why don't you pick up then with 1.1, management considerations, etc.
Okay, 21. All right.
Yeah, page 462.
Yes. Okay.
1.1.
Yeah, I'm here. Just walked away from the computer for a second. Management considerations in designing an AML CFT compliance system. Before embarking on the design of an internal AML CFT compliance system, it is important to distinguish between issues that affect management control, internal and external relationships, and specific arrangements. Some of these are covered Hello.
Right.
Continue.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. External factors, the regulatory regime, an AML CFT system and controls must be tailored to the specific jurisdiction in question on the basis of the relevant national and international standards. A sound knowledge and understanding of the regulatory regime and its detailed requirements is therefore essential. Since one of the key objectives for AML CFT compliance function is to provide comfort that regulatory requirements are being met, compliance arrangements should, where possible, reflect the role and responsibilities of the regulator, as well as those defined by any applicable and recognized international bodies, such as FATF.
Anybody ever heard about FATF? Anybody? What does FATF mean? What is the meaning of FATF?
Financial Action
Task
Force.
Indeed. And who do they represent? Does anybody know? It's a European group. Who do they represent? A group that we don't hear much about anymore because FATF has been so busy representing. It's called the OECD. Remember them?
Yep.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. FATF
Yeah,
came
the
out of
OECD.
OECD. Yeah, they're helping them to watch the world. And they've even created a CFATF. Anybody knows what that is?
Yes.
Yes. To watch
The
us.
Caribbean region.
Yeah, Caribbean Financial Action Task Force to watch us, to evaluate us, to check up on us every 5 years by doing mutual evaluations to see if we are following the rules. Okay. All of a sudden, the Bahamas and Caribbean has become so prominent in certain world issues. We're even getting visits from no less than the UN. Imagine that. A country of 300,000 people struggling out of hurricane and pandemic, we're getting a visit from no less than the UN. My. All right, keep going, Dimitri.
Okay, these factors may include the regulatory environment and objectives applicable to the jurisdiction in question, the regulatory model adopted by the jurisdiction or relevant regulators, the regulator's powers, regulatory principles, and detailed rules. Internal factors. While external regulatory factors apply equally to all regulated financial services businesses, irrespective of size, nature of customer base, turnover, etc., the move towards models that are more risk-based requires arrangements to be proportionate to the risk posed. Accordingly, the exact nature of the AML CFT compliance system that an organization puts in place will depend upon a number of factors, including the risk appetite of the organization, the nature of its operation, the diversity of the operation, the geographical locations in which it operates, the complexity of the business, the scale of the business, the volume of its transactions, the size of its transactions.
Okay, stick a pin one moment. Now notice this compliance model that FATF and OECD and CFATF and all the others have come up with have said, okay, we recognize the uniqueness of your jurisdiction, and therefore, while we expect for you to implement the AML CFT proliferation rules and sanctions, etc., we know that you have to consider things that are unique to your jurisdiction. However, we wish to remind you that there are certain things that every jurisdiction should be thinking about. And therefore, they have provided us with this list. Okay, it's a reasonable list. In carrying out your mandate in whatever jurisdiction you're in, consider your risk appetite within the organization. How far are you prepared to go? What level of risk are you prepared to take? What kind of customers are you prepared to put on your books? And from what jurisdiction? Because sometimes, for example, we have a customer that comes in and provides all the documentation, opens an account and let it sit for a while. let's say for $1 million, and nothing much happened. The bank just take fees off, the financial institution take off fees, and make a few minor transactions, $1,000 somewhere, credit card payment somewhere, and then suddenly you get a request for $375,000 from this bank account that has been open 6 months ago, and they say send it to somewhere in Waikiki, North Korea, or some other strange place. And so now suddenly the financial institution has to decide, do we send this money? How is it that they're making it? But this doesn't fall within the original profile. They never said anything about doing business with somebody in North Korea. So what is the organization's responsibility? Should they take the risk and just send it? Or should they do some enhanced due diligence from whoever gave the instruction to find out what? Why are you sending this to North Korea? Who are you sending it to? What is the reason that you're sending it to North Korea or any such suspicious jurisdiction that we believe falls within our high risk category in terms of jurisdictions? Notice all of those questions come out of number one, risk appetite. If your risk appetite is like you're prepared to take a risk, you'll just send it. Like, oh, that's my client, send it. But if you have this risk appetite that gives you the release when you see a transaction instruction like that coming through, then you start asking those kinds of questions. And depending on what answers you get, you don't say, oh, great, I'll send it since you answered. No way. You now, as the compliance person or the institution or the organization, have to say, wait a minute, now I need to evaluate these answers. And if in evaluating, and all this time the customer is begging you and pushing you, I need you to send the money now, now. Which of course is another red flag. I'm not saying it's not important, but the question must come up sometime, what's the rush? Like, why can't it wait until tomorrow? And so on. So again, these issues about risk appetite, they're all intertwined with a lot of other things, including red flags. So if you get some answers that don't go down well, you may have to make a suggestion, recommendation that those funds be frozen. You may have to make a suspicious transaction report to the FIU. You may have to consider contacting law enforcement or whatever the case might be, or even the Attorney General's office as a financial institution. Certainly seek advice from your attorneys, perhaps, without all the time tipping off your client, because under the law, the FATF law, the OECD thing that they imposed on the whole world, tipping off is now an offense in just about every country in the world, correct? Did you know that?
Yes.
Yes. If you're not sure what tipping off, you should have heard about tipping off by now in your studies.
Yes.
All right. If you still have any doubts about it, go back and read that section, Google it again, read it again. Okay. By law, in the Bahamas, as it is in most developed and countries that are using FATF, tipping off is an offense, and you can actually be fined and or imprisoned for letting the customer know that they're being investigated or checked out in any form or fashion. All right. So this thing about risk appetite, man, it's a very deep and serious thing that needs to be given consideration for every situation, every client that you take on, every circumstance. Because if you slip in any area in terms of the level of risk you assume, it can cost you dearly. Sometimes perhaps not only your reputation, but even your license, your ability to do business. Okay. And so that's one of the key things that jurisdictions are asked to consider, despite its uniqueness, the nature of the business, what kind of business it says, import, export. Folks, let me ask you a question. What's wrong with some customer coming and say, what's the nature of business? Import, export, is that enough? I said, oh, great, I'll open the account for 5 million since you have an import, export business. Is that enough to say? Anyone?
No, it's not. We also need to know what exactly they are importing and exporting.
Of course.
Yes, which could include.
Of course.
Yes.
A lot of financial institutions, they're just looking at the money, the business, see? New business, yay. So when they go to the new business meeting, they can, oh, we've added another 50 million to the account, to the business. Yeah, you may have added 50 million, 100 million, but 100 million of what? And is it 100 million that can come back to haunt you later on? Those are questions you need to ask. Because the couple of, not a couple of bucks, but the money you can make from fees and so on with having the bank account open may be insignificant compared to the damage and problems and money it can cost you if there is a problem, right? So the nature of the operation is very important. How diverse is it? They're doing too many things. How come? What's all this stuff? You have too much stuff to check out. How diverse are you? Which geographic locations you're in? Is that an area that's prone to human trafficking, drug trafficking, weapons proliferation, bribes of politicians? You know, what's going on in that geographic location? These are things that we expected to look at no matter how unique our jurisdictions are in terms of enforcing the money laundering issues. Okay? Scale of business has to do with the size and type of business, how much business volume. You know, for example, you go into the bank now to open up an account. They say, well, how much you plan to make in deposits and withdrawal each month so that they can have something of a profile if you're an individual or a company. And all of that is designed to kind of help the institution to monitor what's going on. Okay, so as you can see, this governance thing opens up with a buying, and all of a sudden, all of us responsible for compliance, our heads are on the chopping block, so to speak, not in a negative way, but in terms of the level of responsibility that we have. Are these things possible to do, or are they impossible to implement? They're not impossible. As a matter of fact, the thing that makes our jobs in compliance difficult is when we decide not to be compliant or not to do our jobs correctly. Most of the times, if we seek to do our jobs correctly, it is far easier. Most of the times when we run into trouble is when we seek to violate the rules. All right, keep going, Dimitri.
Okay, example, possible risks. The board of a reputable Middle Eastern fund manager with a strong reputation for ethical products wishes to diversify. To reduce costs, it is looking to attract customers who make fewer transactions and larger investments. It acquires a small investment company that has typically dealt with high-risk products with a head office in Hong Kong and a branch in Singapore. This poses the following new risks. The risk appetite of the firm appears to have changed, so the AML CFT controls need to be reviewed to reflect this change. The business has diversified and the nature and complexity of the products has changed. Staff will need to have the relevant product, market, and regulatory knowledge to manage the new AML CFT risks. The business will be selling new products, potentially leading to higher value of transactions. Are the AML CFT system adequate to cope?
Okay, keep going.
All of the above need to be reviewed and addressed via the internal AML CFT compliance system. In simple terms, a firm's AML CFT compliance system needs to be tailored to take account of the particular compliance and regulatory risks that it faces and level of risk that it has agreed to take on, its risk appetite. A comprehensive knowledge of the business is vitally important in order to identify where AML CFT compliance risk is most likely to arise. Risk will invariably change over time, so the risk assessment will need to be regularly reviewed and refreshed. The issue of risk management is dealt with in more details in Module 3, Units 8 and 9.
Thank you, Dimitri, for all that already. So now I hope we're being able to narrow down how to approach these risk issues, how to approach these transactions that come into organizations. And remember, we're not just talking about new business, we're talking about existing business, all right? Existing customers change as well. Existing customers change their profile as well. And if we're not watching them or monitoring them or keen enough to see when changes are occurring, then changes can happen right under our very noses as an institution we're not aware of it. So if you have a client who's normally do $5 million worth of business every month on average, and then suddenly it goes to 15 million, what should you do? Should you ignore it? Like, oh, that's an existing customer, he's good. Should we do that? That's my boy. He's good. She's good. What's wrong with that? Should we just ignore that it's gone from 5 million to 15 million since they're an existing customer?
No.
No. That's somebody in compliance has to investigate that. You have to call the customer and say, John or Mary, we noticed that your transactions have gone from an average of $5 million to $15 million a month. And we just like to know why. And of course, John is going to tell you or Mary is going to tell you why. And whatever they tell you, you have to determine if that is sufficient to justify the transactions. Because if it's not sufficient, then you have to ask more questions, ask for proof. I play numbers every month, I win $10 million more on deposit. Really? Mary? Okay, fine. You've been a good customer, but we need you to verify that. We need you to bring in proof of your earnings. And so they bring in a piece of paper that's supposed to be proof of their earnings. It's, you know what? Okay, that's a great start. But we need your compliance person within the organization to send us a certified copy confirming that this is so, and so on. And of course, we know that Mary and John can bribe the compliance officer, pay them a couple of $1,000s to stamp it, to say that's what it came from, and so on. But the point I'm making is, God forbid, but the point I'm making is we have to take all the necessary steps when business activities step out of the normal compliance sphere and start operating differently. And the same kind of attention that we pay to new clients coming in, we have to pay attention to those persons who are inside our organization already, right? Because remember, sometimes existing customers are like family members. Because they're family members, we tend to get a little blind when things are not going right. We make up excuses in our mind because they're related. We sometimes do that with existing customers, especially if they are quote unquote historically good. We keep giving them the benefit of a doubt when we should check out certain things that have gone outside the norm. Something for compliance people to think about. All right, thank you, Dimitri. Delisa, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, why don't you pick up with 113?
Okay, 1 second. I'm reading from my mobile.
Nope. You're not driving, are you?
No, I'm home, but
oh, okay,
on
great.
my phone. Yeah.
No worries.
Okay, creating an effective AML CFT compliance environment. There are two aspects to the creation of an effective AML CFT compliance environment within the financial services business. The first is the introduction and maintenance of systems and controls. The second is the creation of a healthy internal attitude towards the benefits of compliance throughout an organization. The second aspect can often prove to be more difficult to achieve than the first. The benefits are not always tangible. It is impossible to measure the number of incidents or prosecutions avoided through the adoption of a proactive approach to the management of risk. Ultimately, the risk control environment, in particular, the prevailing cultural attitude towards it, will be dictated by the board and senior management. This is where the link between corporate governance and compliance is important. Most regulators now understand that the ultimate responsibility for a firm's compliance lies with the firm's senior management. Compliance is a key aspect of the firm's governance. Nonetheless, management cannot work in isolation, and the AML CFT compliance team often has to encourage and equip the board to perform this important function correctly. To that extent, it is necessary for AML CFT professionals to be able to promote the benefits of compliance at all levels within the business. The defenses that a business has in place will always be undermined by non-compliant employee.
I'll stick up in a second. Delisa, let me say this. Notice right off the top, we are told, as we will be told several times before this whole thing is over, that the good governance is expected to come from where? The top of the organization, the board and senior management. Notice also in her comments, it says, but compliance professionals has to encourage and equip the board to perform this important function. Now, why do they have to encourage and equip them? Shouldn't they know? Yes, they should, but they don't all know. And sometimes they do know. They just ignore. That's why so many organizations find themselves in trouble with regulators, because board members and senior management ignore the rules, seek to circumvent the rules, go around them, violate them. And some of them even make up in their minds, whatever they fine us, we'll pay because we're making more money breaking the rules than the fines they make. How about that? I hope to God that we don't have too many firms like that, but I'm sure there are a couple of them. And so now, not only is the board responsible, but now compliance professionals are being asked to encourage them. So now you have to get in the mix. Now, which means that by getting in the mix, now you're getting into the organizational politics. So because suppose your compliance rules and ethics are incongruent with what they want to do, which is non-compliant, then all of a sudden you are fighting with the big guns. And some compliance officers will tell you they've had some horrible experiences fighting with the big guns, which is one of the reasons why junior people cannot and should not be appointed to compliance positions. Because junior people can be intimidated and forced out. Senior people too, and have been. But the more senior the person is who's in compliance, the more capable they are, and the more senior they are, and the more experienced they are, the harder it would be for boards and senior management to dictate their negative non-compliance behavior. That won't stop them from trying when they make up their minds. But the battle rages on, and that's part of the job of compliance. Now, when you get to that level in compliance, you either have to dance with the wolves or jump out the pot. Because at that level, the pot gets hot. And oftentimes boards will even tell compliance people, you do compliance, we'll do the board and senior management work. What they're really saying is stay out of our business. And compliance is really, my job is to be in your business. I believe I've made my point. It can get very hairy, which is why many people in compliance back off and only report and interact to the board to the extent that the boards and senior management let them, because they want to keep their job and their benefits and their bonuses or whatever it is. Because sometimes even those things are intimidated. Like, really? You're going to lock horns with us, Mr. or Miss Compliance? Don't forget, the bonuses are coming up. We have many other compliance people who love this job. Don't piss us off, kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, they get into your ability to do your job completely. Of course, the textbook doesn't say that, but we can imply that from the nice language that academia uses. Those of us who've been in battle like myself know that there are two kinds of language in this business like every other, academia and the real world. All right, keep going, Delisa.
Okay. In addition to techniques that can be used to promote the role that AML CFT compliance must play, discharging everyday duties in a professional and a highly effective manner helps to promote the standing not only of the compliance department itself, but of the role generally. An unprofessional, ill-equipped MLRO does enormous damage to the wider attitude within an organization towards compliance generally.
Stick a pin, Delisa. Any MLROs in this group? Oh, okay. That's fine. One day you will, might be. Notice that's an interesting statement, even for academia. They're very blunt on that one. Notice, any unprofessional, ill-trained, ill-equipped MLRO does enormous damage if they don't do their jobs. Same thing applies to compliance by extension. Okay? And so, yes, you may be blocking horns, but you're expected to lock horns. You have to find a way to lock horns. And then hopefully when you unlock, at the end of the day, the organization hopefully will be better off for it as a result. That's really the only reason why we do this job in compliance and MLRO. That's not the reason why everybody does it, but that's supposed to be a reason why we all do it. All right, keep going, Delisa.
Defining roles and responsibilities. The first stage in designing an appropriate AML CFT compliance system is to allocate and define responsibilities so that there is no doubt about who is accountable for what and to whom. Buy-in from all personnel to the overall approach involved is also important. The key questions to ask here are who is accountable and who is responsible for managing AML CFT compliance risk.
Who? Okay, keep going.
The role of the board, senior management. In many firms, there is a common misconception that the compliance department, and in particular the AML CFT compliance team, is accountable for ensuring that operations are compliant. In fact, primary accountability for achieving compliance rests with the board and senior management, although typically responsibility is delegated to business heads on the day-to-day business basis. The board will typically set strategic aims, providing the leadership to put them into effect and supervising the management of the business. Good AML CFT compliance should be an automatic part of the corporate governance strategy of a firm. The general framework for preventing money laundering and combating terrorism financing should be firmly embedded in the corporate governance structure, systems, and controls. This needs to be addressed in job descriptions and by constant reinforcement of responsibilities.
Have you guys, have you guys been saying this kind of thing in your organizations, those of you already in it? Like the board taking responsibility and senior management and then passing it down to compliance in order to make things work?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, great. For those of you who are seeing it already, that is a good sign. And it offers some assurance to those who are hoping to get into this profession, some comfort that some things are working. Because things tend to go astray sometimes, and you have to lock on sometimes and lose a job sometimes, and whatever the case might be, sometimes it can make you feel like, things are not working, but they are. They're not working as well as we'd love them to be, but it never does work that way. We just have to keep on keeping on. It's just like the police and defense force. When they go out there, they can't solve every problem because they can't be everywhere all the time. And who knows when the hell somebody's going to do something wicked, evil, doggone criminal. But at least they go to find out who the hell did it and see if we can move them out of the normal social gathering to minimize, the risk of it occurring again and occurring too soon. So yeah, we're always gonna have problems dealing with it. But our jobs is like that. We have to keep battling with it every day on an item by item basis towards mitigating risk and trying to keep compliance issues intact. All right, keep going.
There are a number of compliance risks presented by AML CFT. These include failure to prevent the firm from laundering the proceeds of crime or being implicated in terrorist financing. Excuse me. Failure to manage AML CFT risk effectively within the firm. Failure to comply with regulatory or legal requirements. Failure to prevent breaches of financial sanctions. Failure to keep abreast of external influencing factors or to revise internal arrangements accordingly. Reputational damage as a result of an AML CFT failure.
A lot of failures, but then again, that's why we're here, to see if we can keep those failures to a minimum. All right, and then the final paragraph, Delisa.
Okay, clearly a board cannot manage compliance risk without assistance. It therefore looks to the AML CFT compliance department to support it by providing oversight and reassurance through an effective internal AML CFT compliance and risk control framework. Typically, the board expects the AML CFT compliance team to design, implement, and monitor the AML CFT framework while relying on the business as a whole to operate in accordance with it.
Thank you very much, Delisa. So there you have it, a snapshot into the governance process. Whatever else you don't remember, you must remember that first, it's the board and senior management's responsibility, first and foremost. And secondly, that there's a whole lot of risk inherent in the mismanagement of these requirements. And then thirdly, compliance is responsible for assisting the board and senior management in meeting its objectives. It is not ultimately responsible. Its job is to assist the board and senior management in meeting these responsibilities. Very important to know and to keep clear so that the lines are not blurred. Some organizations, some board members and senior management people will give compliance people the impression that they are first and foremost responsible. You are responsible, Mrs. Jones. That's why we're in this mess. When in fact, you already told them in several reports that they need to fix certain things and they ignored it. And then suddenly when things go wrong, folks try to turn it on to compliance. You are responsible. Now you have to lock arms and say, I've sent you several reports. And according to my class that I did and my manual that I studied and all these other things, and the regulators, my understanding, Mr. Jones and others, is that you are primarily responsible. And then they're going to hate you for that. But that is in fact how it works. Okay. So don't let the environment, you're going to have to be thick-skinned when you get into this stuff. You're going to have to be firm in your resolve. And hopefully when you get these senior management positions in compliance, you have the thickness of skin and the fortitude to do battle at the senior management level, because they are inevitable. Sooner or later, you will be challenged or you will have to challenge someone. All right. Thank you, Delisa. Okay, Ivania, are you there? Ivania? Okay, while we wait for Ivania to come back. Jaffe, are you there?
Hi.
Okay, Jaffe, why don't you pick up to supply the supply?
All right. The supply of management information to the board about AML CFT compliant risk is a prerequisite of effective corporate governance and risk management generally. Although the framework can ensure that information about compliance risk is regularly fed into the board, it is up to the board to decide whether the framework is adequate to provide the degree of comfort required to seek ways of improving the information provided or the wider framework itself. Systems and controls, including policies and procedures, should be documented, and the overall responsibilities for countering money laundering and terrorism financing should be allocated to one or more members of senior management. The board should oversee both the effectiveness of and compliance with risk management systems and controls, and take prompt action necessary to address any deficiencies. If the board abdicates its responsibility in this respect, the damages can be significant, as illustrated by the following 3 examples of regulatory enforcement action.
All right, stick a pin for a moment, Jaffe, because now you're going to get into some very interesting territory. But before you go there, let us reinforce again that it is first the board's responsibility, assisted by the compliance department, to get the job done. The board has to direct it. Compliance provides the information, the guidance, and the implementation in some cases, and so on, to help them get the job done. Very important. In some organizations, those responsibilities become blurred for some reason and create all kinds of problems. All right. So let's see what kinds of scenarios can come up when we seek not to do this thing right. Keep going, Jaffe.
All right, the first example is HSBC fined for lack of money laundering controls. So in July 2012, the U.S. Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations published a 300-page report which accused global banking giant HSBC of acting as a money laundering conduit for drug kingpins and rogue nations.
How many pages again?
300 pages.
300 pages. Anybody in this class ever seen a 300-page report? Probably not. I can only say it's quite extensive. And if they're going to the trouble at the Senate level to create a 300-page report, something went down at HSBC. In fact, HSBC is always involved in something going down, as is Credit Suisse and JP Morgan and many of these other major banks in the United States and around the world. All right, keep going.
The subcommittee investigation focused on 5 areas of abuse, one of which related to the servicing of high-risk affiliates through correspondent banking services. So HSBC's U.S. subsidiary, HBUS, offered corresponding banking services to HSBC Bank Mexico and treated it as low-risk customer despite its location in a country facing money laundering and drug trafficking challenges. High-risk customers such as Castillo de Cambio, high-risk productions such as U.S. dollar accounts in the Cayman Islands, a banking secrecy location, and weak AML controls. The Mexican affiliate transported $7 billion in physical dollars to HBUS from 2007 to 2008, outstripping other Mexican banks, even twice its size, raising red flags that the volume of dollars might include proceeds from illegal drug sales in the U.S. The U.S. Department of Justice claimed that HSBC had moved $881 million for 2 drug cartels in Mexico and Colombia and accepted $15 billion in unexplained bulk cash across the bank's counters in Mexico, Russia, and other countries. So HSBC needed to pay $1.9 billion in fines to settle the allegations of the U.S. regulators. The cost of remediation to correct mistakes exceeded these costs many times over.
Now, folks, I don't know about you guys. I don't know how hooked into all this crazy stuff you are, but I think that scenario speaks for itself about the past problems of money laundering, the present problems of money laundering, and the future problems of money laundering. In our jurisdiction, it doesn't sound, it's like humongous to think that these things are happening. For us, we have the equivalent of tens of millions at the HSBC level, and in international countries, we have the turn of billions and billions of dollars. Notice, $15 billion in unexplained bulk cash. Imagine that. Not wire transfers, not managers' checks. $15 billion in unexplained cash. Mind-boggling. It is no wonder every compliance textbook you pick up, every law in just about every jurisdiction you find that if the deposit is over $10,000 or $15,000, you have to verify it. That there's a major discouragement of taking any more than that in cash over the counter, period. But in those days, not too long ago, by the way, not 19 something, 20 something, these guys were still able to pull it off. Obviously, they got help from HSBC and her affiliate, because HSBC and her affiliate clearly made billions of dollars from these transactions. And so that 1.29 billion that they had to pay in fines may have been a drop in the bucket compared to what they made in fees for allowing this dirty money to be laundered. God knows how much they made in fees from that those transactions alone. So that 1.9 billion might have just been a drop in the bucket, but at least the Treasury was richer by $1.9 billion. It's better than nothing. Okay, and notice they paid it to settle allegations, not fact yet. It never went to court because there wasn't enough proof, but there was certainly enough something to cause HSBS to say, we don't want this to be petitioned before the courts. We'll pay the fine, and say that we didn't have any idea about what happened. We'll just pay the fine. Okay, guys, let's be friends again until the next time. All right, very serious stuff. We do have our equivalency to this in this jurisdiction. Make no mistake about it. That's why all of you are being trained and so many other compliance persons are out there fighting this war that wages every day, everywhere. All right, keep going, Jeffrey.
All right, so the second example we have is Standard Chartered Bank fine for sanctions breaches. So in September 2012, Standard Chartered Bank agreed to pay $340 million to New York State Financial Services regulator, the Department of Financial Services, for allegedly scheming with state-owned Iranian banks, corporations, and other entities to launder at least $250 billion through the U.S. financial system in violation of U.S. Iranian sanctions. Approximately 59,000 secret transactions were cleared through Standard Chartered's New York branch between 2001 and 2007.
Now, is my hair the only hair rising from this stuff? Maybe you guys can get the full impact of this yet, but you will as you venture further in your profession. But I'll tell you, this is very serious. And notice these are major reputable banks. They're messing with us in this part of the world. That's fine. But look at these major players in developed countries. They're the biggest launderers of money that we can ever think of being. Interestingly enough, HSBC, Standard Chartered, these are household names, major banking industries in the United States and the UK and other parts of the world. And notice, look who they're laundering money to.
Yeah, I was about to say the timing of this and the fact that it's the US and Iran and the timing is between 2001 and 2007 is very shady.
Absolutely. And Iran, absolutely. Very shady indeed. And Iran, no less, who's supposed to be under sanctions every single minute. But just like how China gets money in, they even get money in through US banks. Imagine that. So it makes you wonder, who is really in bed with whom at this major international level? They're in the Caribbean and South America and this part of the world beating us to death, so to speak. That's fine, because we know the problems with money laundering. It has all kinds of other problems connected to it. Okay? Maybe that's one of the reasons why we have some guns here as well and some human trafficking going on and all this crazy stuff, even in the Commonwealth all these days. How the heck did we get caught up in all that mess? Once upon a time, when I was a youngster, these words were not even part of the discussion with the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. In the last 20 years, all hell. So it does raise the question, who's really in bed with whom? And how is it that these countries that are supposed to be so highly regulated are still able to launder money to no less than a sanction-driven country like Iran again? Not to mention, the new Biden administration has said that they plan to get into discussions again with the Iran nuclear deal, which was very favorable under the Democrats before the Republicans came in 4 years ago and shut it down. So now we're going back to it. I wonder what that will entail. And whatever entails, will they be compliant enough and sufficient enough to tell us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help us all, God, because we're all impacted by this stuff, whether you believe it or not. All right. So while we're in the Caribbean shaking dillies and eating mangoes and all that, these guys are out there doing some serious stuff that one day, if we're not careful, will impact us all. Just like the doggone pandemic, only worse. Can it be worse? Absolutely. All right. And then the final example.
All right, our last example, we have Standard Bank being fined for AML breaches. So Standard Bank was fined for failing to conduct proper enhanced due diligence and monitoring. In January 2014, the UK FCA fined Standard Bank PLC $7.64 no, sorry, let me say that again.
Yeah, it's a
7
big old
million
number.
pounds, 7 million pounds, 640,400 for failings relating to its AML procedures, policies and procedures over corporate clients linked to politically exposed persons.
Yeah, PAPS again. That's my foot. Keep going. They're those people again. Yep.
So the Financial Conduct Authority had reviewed Standard Bank's policies and procedures and a sample of 48 corporate customer files, all of which had a connection with one or more PAPs. The results of this review highlighted serious weaknesses in the application of the bank's risk assessment criteria and its related policies and procedures, in that it did not consistently carry out adequate EDG measures before establishing business relationships with corporate customers that had connections with PAPs, and they did not conduct the appropriate level of monitoring of existing business relationships by keeping customer due diligence up to date. So Standard Bank is the UK subsidiary of Standard Bank Group, South Africa's largest banking group with extensive operations in 18 African countries and operations in 13 other countries outside of Africa. Standard Bank in the UK serves as the hub for all the group's international operations outside Africa, predominantly offering corporate and investment banking services. At the time, the majority of Standard Bank's UK customers were corporate entities from emerging markets in industries such as mining, oil and gas, telecommunications, infrastructure, agriculture, and finance. The FCA considered Standard Bank's failings to be particularly serious for the following reasons. One, between December 2007 and July 2011, Standard Bank failed to comply with Regulation 20 of the UK money laundering regulation because it failed to take reasonable care to ensure that all aspects of its AML policies were applied appropriately and consistently to its corporate customers connected to PEP.
Yes.
So two, Standard Bank provided loans and other services to a significant number of corporate customers that emanated from or operated in jurisdictions that have been identified by industry recognized sources as posing a higher risk of money laundering.
Yes.
Standard Bank identified issues relating to its ability to conduct sufficient reviews of its customer files early in the relevant period, but failed to take the necessary steps to resolve the issue. Another issue they had was that the FCA had previously brought actions against a number of firms for AML deficiencies and had stressed to the industry the importance of compliance with AML requirements. And the last issue was that the weaknesses in Standard Bank's AML systems and controls resulted in an unacceptable risk that Standard Bank would be used to launder the proceeds of crime.
Thank you very much, Jay. Suffice it to say that that is a mouthful for all of us who are listening, who are currently in compliance, looking to go into compliance. These typologies, cases, examples are not to be taken lightly at all. I can assure you that they are all occurring in many of these organizations around the world as we speak. In fact, since the date of these incidences, these guys have become even more sophisticated, even more determined to, in some cases, violate the regulatory requirements and legal requirements, even more determined to just put into their budgets even an amount to pay for any potential fines as long as they can make more money that exceeds the fines they think they're going to have to pay. And since not enough of them are going to bloody prison, they are persistent in their behavior, some of them, even though the FCA had gone in, brought action, told them they need to fix it, stressed to them the importance, and still many of them have deliberately and intentionally, then and now, if you want some current cases, just Google bank failures in 2020. There may have been a couple even in 2021 during the pandemic. And I wouldn't talk about 2-3 years before, 5 years before, between 2015 and now. It's right there. It's a mountain of this stuff. So is it going away? No. So we as professionals in this field, we have to be as determined as we can to do the best job that we can in order to mitigate our organizations against these issues. Will we solve all these problems? Hell no. But we can sure do as much as we can to reduce it. When these problems occur at the management level, the board level, the senior management level, they are harder to resolve when the top guns are quote unquote non-compliant, which is another word for crooked and unethical in some jurisdictions. And God forbid, we have much of that still going on. Even the regulators are becoming more and more pissed off at them at the board and senior management level because they keep deliberately forcing regulators to enhance their enforcement procedures more and more. Yet, despite the fines, making the treasuries richer, which is fine, they continue in many jurisdictions to violate. And I can only say that this can only be because of three reasons. One, they are inherently unethical and greedy. Two, the fines that are being made on these organizations are not enough because they're making more money by violating the rules. And then three, perhaps not enough of them are going to prison for their behavior because they all blame the end result on business failure of some kind or some other jurisdiction or some client. Question?
I mean, just to play devil's advocate, right?
I want you to be.
If I just made $15 million and you fine me $1.6 million, I'm probably gonna do it again.
No doubt. And you said million, but let's change that to billion.
Sorry, that was billion. I'm sorry, I said million, but it was billion.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm gonna do it again.
Absolutely. So now, thank you very much for being the devil's advocate. I love devil's advocates because until we change that posture, like increasing the fine significantly where they really feel it in their pocketbooks by the tune of many more billions, and in addition to many more billions in fines, we start locking up some doggone board members and senior management people. I suspect until those two things happen, the battle will rage on, unfortunately. All right. So for those of you who are already in it, lock in. It's not going, the battle is not going anywhere. And for those of you who will be joining the battle, we welcome you. Because now you have an idea, potentially, of what you will be dealing with in one form or another. Remember, doesn't matter if it's hundreds, thousands, millions, or billions. Violations are violations. They all have reputational, socio, and economic issues attached to them, and a whole bunch of other problems. So wherever you are and whatever organization you're in, small, medium, or large, trust me, everything you do to fix it or to help to fix it will be a plus. Because I'll tell you, as she said earlier, being the devil's advocate, gee, if you paid finding me $2 billion and I'm getting 15, please keep the fines coming. All right. That is unfortunate, but it is an unfortunate truth. All right. So we'll stop there today. When we come back, we'll finish the unit. So a whole lot more interesting things coming up just in that area alone. And then we'll go from there. Any questions? Anybody before we break? All right. You have my contact. Please send me an email with your contact so that I can reach you guys if I need to. If you're reading, you come across something and you don't want to wait until next week's class to raise it, or whatever the case might be, please feel free to send me a note and I'll be happy to respond. Until then, you guys have a great week and I'll see you again next week. Remember, the AML battle rages on and it's going nowhere. All right. Before you go, let me make sure that persons who I called earlier are not with us, so I can mark you present. Alma, are you here? Okay, Alma is still not here. Who else? Saran? Okay, great. Then everybody's here. You guys have a great week. I'll see you next week at 9:30 right here. Please take care. Even if you get your shot already, remember you still have to wear your mask, stay safe. And stay 6 feet.
Thank you. You do the same.
Thank you too. Thank you.
Same to you.
Okay,
Thank you. Have a great week. Bye.
Absolutely.
Have a good
Take
day.
care. Be careful out there.